let's jump into it. We got some people here. See if they want to do it.
All right, I'm listening to Prime.
Hey, hi, hey everyone. Thanks for being here.
Hey.
Thanks for being around. Hey, if you got a camera, turn it on. It's actually a huge help to the stream. You can do so. But yeah, we'll get started.
Yeah, I do have a lot to say about this topic, so I'm pretty excited.
Okay, interesting. Fuck, where's my thing?
I'm just here to make sure you guys don't say anything stupid like I'm expecting.
Okay, promise. You got a camera?
Yeah, let me finish this round of CS and I'll do.
Okay. All right. So we got some people here. Hello, D10 for coming through. Nice to see you once again. Thanks for stopping by. Looking sharp, right? Looking sharp. As always. I don't know. Like with your haircut, I mean. In terms of and there's Dan. Dan, thanks for coming through. Thanks for being here. And Problematic Pan is back with us. We love Pan. We always happy to have Pan around. Did you just flip us all off? Is that what you just did?
No, that was like a finger gun thing.
Was that?
Like
okay. I thought
No. You just said my name. I was like, hey, it's like a hey. I'm not flipping anybody off. Not yet.
Pan's too nice for that. I would actually be quite surprised. I'm like, oh man, this is a new arc in Pan's story now. Well, he's a cool guy. All right, and now we have Promise, who is here too. I am still getting used to being able to see his handsome face. Seriously, thanks for being around. The Turk is in chat. He says stupid chat in Prime's panels. I know, it's only when you're around does that usually happen, but you can come in and join, right, if you want to add that to the conversation. Okay. Okay, sorry. All right. Yeah, what are your initial thoughts on this? I'll give you my thoughts later on, but what are your initial thoughts on this gambling thing? So we'll start with Dream and work our way down.
Okay. My initial thoughts on gambling is I think I always err on the side of caution and go with regulation, because I think prohibition is could be more dangerous than not. Like when we prohibited alcohol, a lot of speakeasies opened up, and a lot of gangs started over the sale and consumption of alcohol. So I think similar actions can be proceeded if we ban gambling. I know gambling is destructive, just like any addictive substance, and I'm also on the legalize every addictive substance, like all drugs. I'm all the legalized drugs, so it's like it makes no sense for me to say legalize drugs, but at the same time don't legalize gambling, because they basically do the same thing in terms of their destructive power. They can both all ruin lives and tear apart families. So I think the solution isn't prohibition, it's a regulation and education. So let's teach these people about what happens when you gamble, how to gamble safely, and just like how we give people a space. Like in Portugal, you have like safe houses to get do your drugs and educate people on who are addicts. And so the problem isn't the gambling itself. It's obviously the addiction to gambling is the problem. Because if I'm having fun between friends and we want to make a bet, that's not a problem in itself. The problem is when it's destructive to your life and you can't stop gambling no matter how destructive it is. Like my uncle, he had an addiction problem with gambling, and it tore things apart with his marriage. But it was all because he won one time. He won like $75,000 one time. He's like, oh my God, if I could just hit that 75,000, remember that one time I hit 75,000? It helped me so much. We went on trips. I got to pay for the surgery, yada, yada. He's like, man, if I could just hit that one more time. And I understand that's an issue. But I'm not sure you can solve that with prohibition. Because like I think you can do it in an illegal manner, and we can't really predict what ways things will pop up. Like new innovative ideas that criminals would do in order to, keep gambling going on. We can't predict for that. Also, there's something like, something called like, like monitor gambling, like professional. I was talking in chat about this. Like professional poker is monitored gambling. Like there's rules, and everybody there has some sort of skill. So it's not all luck. Of course, it is some luck. So I think when it's rigged, I think we should ban like rigged gambling. When there's like rigged gambling,
it's already banned. I don't know why you're mentioning that.
Okay, but I understand.
Because if it's rigged, it's called cheating, and cheating is illegal.
Well, it'd be fraud, but yeah,
fraud.
Point stands, yeah.
I understand. I was more talking about like slot machines. Like I know it's not technically rigged, but it's always rigged in the favor of the house to always get out more than.
Wait, literally everything is always rigged in favor of the house.
By law, there's a percentage chance for these gambling machines to have certain limits of risk and reward. So cool. I mean, by in a lot of these places, like specifically you look at in Las Vegas, they're heavily regulated to a point where it's given the point where they give the amount of what is the minimum amount of like risk that you're allowed to put for these gambling machines, including in a lot of other different games that they can have to put forth to have for people to play and bet and gamble. If there isn't any of that, then obviously there's going to be, I would find it to be some illegality or rigged, but by definition currently to the laws, it's not rigged.
Okay, great. Disregard what I said. But just one last point.
Okay.
One last point that I want to make is that I think we should ban like loot boxes.
Okay.
Because they're dangerous to kids. And that's like for games that's ready for everyone, and that is kind of like gambling. It is gambling, and I believe that EA was sued in a European country. The European courts ruled that it was gambling, and so I think we just need to adopt what Europe said or that Belgium said and over there, and do the United States because kids should not be having access to easy levels of loot boxes and gambling like that.
Interesting. Okay. All right. There's lots of stuff we can talk about here. But thank you for that, Dream. Much appreciated. Dan, if you have anything else you wanted to say, go ahead, and then we'll go to the rest of people.
I mean, even though I disagree on that specific part, Dream, I do specifically do agree on the part of saying that online gambling, like loot boxes, for example, is definitely something that has to be taken care of through the legal system and at least some form of regulation. I directly, we probably have all experiences who have been doing gaming, that it's a dramatic annoyance. And if you're less impulsive, such as a child who needs that quick item and whatnot, they would definitely have worse of a chance of dealing with that situation and will directly affect their money and for their parents negatively. We have seen many of this happen, such as like a kid buying like a bunch of loot stuff on a game, and it costs their parents $15,000.
And then their parents can recharge the card.
No, the parents were not actually for that specific case. The parents couldn't recharge it.
Well, there'd be some pretty specific reasons because normally they would be able to.
I would assume so. I'll get you the link to that, Pan, just to be sure.
Yeah, I don't think everyone's been able to there have been people who have just lost cash, and because they're like, well, this is a legitimate charge, right? Like the kid. I mean, like if it depends. Like if it's like a 6-year-old, maybe, right? But like it could be an older child.
Let me get an article, but to finish the point about everything, I am not super familiar with the kind of rules for the gambling in the federal sense of all the other counties and Native American counties that are nations that have run their own version of gambling. And I would assume so to each of these Native American nations who own casinos, they would have at least direct knowledge to run exactly to what other rules that they have done forth. Because much of these corporations who own these casinos in the nation, in these Native American nations, are Las Vegas companies. So much of that is not known, and a lot of these companies know exactly what's the best legal way to do so with these establishments. And I probably will not say directly that they do it differently, much of these Native American casinos, to those from specifically Las Vegas. but I can understand too. Certain people are be concerned about the addiction crisis that's been happening with much of the Native American people. That for sure has, and much others who have directly been affected negatively through much of these areas. And I do think there has to be some, at least, programs through these casinos, or at least funded through much of these corporations, these casinos, to programs at least dealing with addictions, and or at least refuse a service to those who are addicted to.
Thanks so much appreciated. I will go to Pan, and I promise, and I'm just going to say thank you, Turk, for stopping by. Nice to see you once again. All right, well, for now, until you aggravate the fuck out of me. All right, let's go, Pan.
Yeah, I'm probably going to keep this a little bit shorter than everyone else. I think that you have a right to do with your money as you please. That includes gambling and stuff. I don't buy this argument about kids. First of all, kids don't actually have that much money. Second of all, kids' lives aren't ruined if, they lose their lunch money because they buy a loot box. Loot boxes are annoying. I don't like loot boxes either. That's why I don't buy them. But there's some people out there who want to buy loot boxes, and that's, basically their right. If really your argument is about children, we should be... maybe you can make a thing where if you you can't have like prepaid, so at every time you need to pay for something in one of these games, the parent has to sign off again, and they can't just save their username and password or something. If it's really such a big problem that there are these repeat transactions that kids are doing on these gaming things without their parents' knowledge, but overall, just parents should pay more attention to their kids. But otherwise, it's your money. You have every right to do with it what you want, especially, well, not every right, but when it comes to something that has no negative externalities such as gambling, you have every right to, you have every right to do it.
No negative externalities.
No negative externalities. Okay, in the sense that you betting your money, the only person that can lose is you, right?
Okay. All right. Well,
you can't bet. What do you mean? What do you mean?
Sorry, no, it's fine. We'll get
I'm talking about externalities in a specifically sense.
I want everyone else to get a chance, and then we'll get into this, right? And don't worry. I'll smack you down later, Pan. Go ahead.
Yeah, the articles and VC chat, and it's going to be on Twitch too.
Okay, thank you. And Promise, please. Oh, and I'll put the article that I was reading originally. I'll put that in chat for you guys as well. Go ahead, Promise.
So basically, I think that there are specific types of games that require skill. Most pokers, you can play blackjack. Now, there are games where it requires you to there is a house advantage, and you have to be able to overcome that house advantage in order to be able to win. I think that most of those games are okay to play, but when you talk about sports gambling or horse racing or any type of thing that relies on external variables like that, you end up problematically assigning a value, and you attribute more to luck than to what is actually viable. And I think that creates problematic gambling. Now, there are addictions to gambling. There are fallacies, like the gambler's fallacy that happens, where people believe that their streak is worth more than it actually is, and it actually can attribute to something when it doesn't. And I think that those can be problems. But I think that if you try and limit people on their ability to manage things in that way, you're essentially taking people's liberties with very little cause or reason, and I think that that's wrong.
Okay, let's go to the Turk, please.
Yeah, so I won't go there. I think gambling is in moderation decent if people are openly willing to put their money up and risk things, so they're open to do that, because gambling can be anything from going to a craps table, spinning in a loot box, or putting their money into an investment that could go belly up at any minute. So it's what do we really mean by gambling here? And if as long as they're doing it correctly, I don't think it's a problem. But there's such a thing as addiction, and there's plenty of other things that are addictive. And so do we need to regulate gambling like we regulate other addictive things? So I'm pretty open for any discussion, really.
Yeah. Okay. Quick. That's an interesting take. Okay. So, what do I think of this? So I'm mostly, you know, like on that social libertarian side where people should, you know, do what they want, right? With their own lives, right? And in fact, I can be pretty extreme with this. I think it's like, what do we want to encourage? Right? So I've argued, like I said previously before, I argued about whether like that we should allow people to have like to go through assisted suicide, right? That should be a fine thing. If someone wants to end their life, then we should let that happen. However, I think it's different here, especially because the state benefits from this particular vice. Gambling ruins lives, right? It absolutely does. We know this, right? Sure, there's many people can gamble in moderation, just as the Turk mentioned before, right? People have done it. I've managed to do it, right? Because I'm super fucking afraid of losing my money. But so people can do that. That's fine, right? And like people can do drugs in moderation. Absolutely the case. But gambling ruins lives. And it's not just you. Well, you lost your money. No, it's your family. Your family lost that money, right? Your family might lose their house. Your family might be tossed out of the apartment. Your family might lose that car, which is crucial to the livelihood, right? The income of the family. So it's like further damage, further corrosive damage down the line, right? Of course, we can decrease gambling, right? Like in the article I read, it talked about how gambling has been increasing in recent years because we've given more avenues to do so, and made it more accessible, and just been betting literally on more things, right? We're betting on more things than we used to, right? Like betting on the ponies, like was the big thing previously, but that's long gone. So many other things to bet on. In terms of sports gambling, so I think that, and so it ruins lives, and the government profits on that. That's an important link, because it's like we will provide you this service, right? That we know will hoover up cash from the people who can afford it the least. That's a problem. It's a regressive tax. It's effectively a regressive tax on the poor, right? We're going to go there. Go ahead.
I feel like that's an argument against the government having lotteries, which is fine. You know, like I think that's a completely legitimate argument, but I don't. These two seem pretty separable to me, right? To say that the government shouldn't be allowed to host, or the government shouldn't be allowed to encourage, you know, behaviors that, you know, society deems, you know, not great. That's a whole different argument than, you know, we shouldn't be allowed to do those things. And all of the arguments that you made about gambling can be made about drugs too. Drugs don't just affect yourself. If you OD, it can affect your entire family. If you're your family's main source of income, it'll infect you. They could lose their homes and stuff. Like all of these arguments are pretty much identical for every other. You know,
you can even apply to suicide.
Yeah, you could even apply that to. I mean, I think less so there, because generally the people who that applies to are already in a position where, you know, they're in a rough spot. But I think theoretically it could. Like I don't see the inherent difference between any of these.
So I think the difference. Sorry. I think there's a difference, and maybe you don't think it's a big enough difference, but I think there's a difference nonetheless. One, for suicide, like the government wouldn't be making money off of suicide, right? Like at least not in any scheme that I would think of, right? I don't think any scheme that any of you would think of. You could recognize like that would be a problem if there was a monetary value to people executing themselves, right? Like we get that?
Hold on.
Right.
Wait, wouldn't it necessarily have to cost money? And if it costs money, there's taxes involved. And if there's a tax involved, the government's going to get the taxes.
Right. No. I mean, so like,
yes.
So
you're saying going to be free?
So you're saying like because like that suicide, like maybe getting the paraphernalia for that might be taxed. That's the revenue from that would be like, okay, let's say like, you know, like drugs, right? Like there were like, hold on. Oh my God. Like let's say like it was like drugs. that would need to be involved, right? Like we give a set amount of drugs, like for the assisted suicide, right? And that there would be a tax on those drugs, like there is for literally any product. You're saying that would constitute a big enough risk, right? A big enough perverse incentive that might be a problem. No, I don't think that's the case.
No.
I don't think. Let's not pretend that that's amazing. If you honestly think that, Pan, that's a ridiculous fucking statement. Like that compared to the market that is online gambling and lottery as well, right? The lottery, which is like the government directly doing this.
No, I'm not saying that.
Oh, okay, so you're not saying that. All right, what are you saying?
No, I'm not saying that. I didn't say it's as big enough as a market as others. I'm just saying there is going to be money given to the government. That's all I'm saying. There is going to be money given.
No. So that's why I was trying to interrupt a little bit, Prime. When it comes to suicide, if you're like going to be, executing a will and testament or whatever, whenever you commit suicide, a lot of those legal protections that you've got in place don't apply anymore because you willingly took your life. So it's like your insurance doesn't kick in.
This is assisted suicide, though, like a doctor, like at a hospital stuff.
Right, and it still applies. You are willingly killing yourself in order to do these things, and so it's like you don't get any estate tax coming back from the government in that instance. You don't get any inheritance tax going to your progeny. So it's like there's a lot less money in suicide from the government's perspective. We would much rather have the government have people that are paying their taxes and X, Y, and Z. Contributing to the economy stuff. So it's like it is fundamentally different from a government income perspective.
Yeah.
Well, I think that's true about assisted suicide, right? But I don't think we should separate this. Like, yes, because the government can tax something, it does have an incentive, to keep that thing legal. I mean, it's clearly the case with alcohol, right? Government gets a decent amount of money from alcohol taxes or alcohol licenses, so that you can serve alcohol at your businesses and stuff. So the idea that we can't possibly imagine legalizing this to create a perverse incentive, I think is a little bit silly. Like, I agree that in the assisted suicide case, probably not going to have a big, perverse incentive. However, for literally every other, thing, like even the things that we consider innocuous, it definitely does have some sort of incentive because, the government gets a decent portion of their revenue through sales tax. So by definition, they're benefiting from this sort of commerce.
Is it like Prime? Are you saying that are you making the argument to illegalize gambling because of it harms people or something? Or
I'm for lots of reasons. And
basically, yeah.
No. Okay, so for lots of reasons. We'll get to it in a second. Hold on a second. I need to deal with Pan for a second. Pan, right? So, right, you have multiple bribes on the table, right? 3 different people are trying to bribe you. You're going to accept all those bribes, right? You're going to accept a $1 bribe, a $100 bribe, and a $10 million bribe. Which of those actually gets your attention? Which of those do you think demands more of your time?
I mean, the $10 million bribe.
Okay, great. Obviously. So obviously, having a lot more money matters, right? In terms of how it creates incentives. So if you're talking about the trickle of money that would come in terms of tax revenues for those other when it comes to suicide, right? The trickle of tax revenue that could come in, that is absolutely not on any of the same scale as it would be for gambling, right? The amount of money that comes in there, especially direct money that comes in through the lottery, right? Like those 2 things are not on the same scale. Like that revenue would be itty bitty, and would be a loss in the end because, as the trick I'll probably point out, you lose a tax-paying individual. Compare that to actually gambling, where you could keep that tax-paying individual and then still hoover up their savings and their income into the future, right? So
again, I agree with the assisted suicide thing, but I mean, what's the market cap of alcohol? What's the market cap of smoking and tobacco? I imagine these aren't insignificant. I'd imagine if I had to guess, I would imagine that the alcohol industry is larger than the gambling industry. And that creates just as many problems, if you are an alcoholic, that can affect your family, yada, 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 etc. So gambling is not the biggest vice industry that there is. I mean, in fact, the article mentioned porn, which many people consider a vice, which is a larger, it's definitely going to be larger than stuff like gambling and stuff. So, like, the idea that gambling is uniquely big, I don't know if I buy that. I feel like there's other industries that are just like this, which you would not say we should ban, that are bigger and provide more money for the government than gambling does. Now, if you have a specific gripe against the government holding its own lotteries to raise revenue, that's fine. I think that's reasonable, and I'd actually probably agree. I'm not a fan of the government doing much in general, especially not things that I think could send the wrong message. And if we as a society don't want to encourage a behavior, it's probably an okay thing that we make it so the government doesn't do this. But I don't think the gambling industry is unique from the other vice industries, at least in the private sector.
Go ahead.
You want to respond or
no? Go ahead. I'm sorry, I'm doing a few things in the background, but I'll jump back into it.
So
I wanted to at least make a compromise between Pan and Prime on this. One thing for say about gambling, alcohol is definitely a bigger industry than gambling, 100% sure, from much of the other industries I know out there. And given the whole entire situation of what Prime gave you, $100 versus $100 million, I think it takes a certain character in the regulation industry to at least not go through any of that. What the person that I go to most as the best example is, ironically, probably your least favorite person, Reid, the former U.S. senator that led the Senate for at least 8 years for the Democrat Party. He famously, in the 70s, when receiving a bribe, punched a guy in the face. and when he became the head of the Regulation Bureau for Gambling and Entertainment, I believe that's a different name, I believe. But for a man like that to at least deal with corruption through any other ways a possible like that, I would prefer someone like that in a regulation industry than to someone currently. Sadly, I'm not going to use Henry as the best case because he obviously became very corrupt later in his career as a senator. But I do think at least putting forth the same standards that we have seen in Las Vegas to a federal standard can at least work, because that is the best case scenario that we can give for those who are in for Las Vegas, because I think they have been doing so well so far, dealing with other versions of crime that have been very pandemic during their earlier times, of the 70s, 60s, 80s, mafias and whatnot. I think that'd be easily agreed to many of the people here.
So I'm going to fact check a little bit here. I post a link in the VC chat. You can post it to your chat if you want, but it's a very limited Illinois 2012. It's pretty old data. I don't have any more extensive data, but it's the net income from the beer, wine, and spirits is about half, at least in Illinois in 2012, than the gambling industry in Illinois itself. So it's I don't know how this pans out towards other markets in the US or globally, but to say that this one vice is worse than another and that we should tax one more than the other, it's not a very sound statement. But I would say that the bad stuff that comes with gambling is far more complex and compounded when you look at other sorts of things that are tied in with gambling, rather than alcohol, and all that stuff is kind of more limited in scope. So there's just some facts to chew on as we talk about the debate.
Yeah, you were talking specifically for Illinois. I would like to get.
Yeah.
Yeah. So by the way, I did look up the actual number. It's about it's a $250 billion a year industry in the United States, which makes it about 6 times larger than the gaming industry. So
gaming is also not
6
legal.
times larger.
What?
Legal in every single state. So drinking is.
It's okay. Well, it's legal in most states, I think, or at least some sort.
Gambling is illegal in some states.
I mean, yeah.
Okay,
it's illegal in some states, but if you go to
but you can. But they have they have ways they can get around it. They'll put it on a fucking boat or something. I know that they do that in a state that's next to mine. Like they'll just put casinos on boats. It's weird.
Okay, well,
I
my
get
point
you
still
watch
stands
Narcos.
that
Yeah,
it's
no.
still
Not
a
Narcos.
significantly
Ozarks.
bigger industry, and I think it'd be a little bit silly to think that in the future gambling is going to have a larger market share than alcohol. Alcohol is used it's used in our
It's
socialized
advertised a lot
everywhere.
more too.
Yeah, it's advertised everywhere. Like all of the idea that like gambling
more
has
accessible.
larger market
But
share
a
than
lot of that
gaming is kind of
alcohol,
ridiculous.
a lot of those alcohol sales come from people who are in the process of gambling.
Do you think that's true? What
probably a
percent
small
do you think that
fraction,
that's
yeah.
true? I highly
I'm
doubt
sure
that.
it's actually a much larger percent than like most people think, especially when you look at like places like Vegas,
Between 2 and
where
8.
Well,
let
Do you
me-
have-
I mean
let- let him get-
that's a pretty big chunk when you're looking at a $70 billion industry. Like
I think clubs
when you
probably
have
take out more.
when you
I'll
have
make
places
a
like
Dewey
Las
argument.
Vegas that actually like that are giving you free alcohol while you're gambling. So a lot of people will go there specifically to just sit at like a penny slot machine and continuously just get fed drinks all night. Or when you have places like me here in Kansas City where like 3 or 4 of our biggest companies that are hiring here are going to be the like 3 or 4 casinos that are here. And what are they constantly hiring for? Like they're constantly trying to get 2 different people. They're trying to get gambling floor supervisors and they're trying to get cocktail girls.
You said you're in Kansas City, right?
Yeah.
Okay, well, there's 3 or 4 casinos. How many bars are there in Kansas City? How many restaurants are there in Kansas City?
The
I'm
bars
guessing
and
it's significantly
restaurants
more than 3 or 4.
pale in size though.
Yeah, well, I mean, they pale in size, but not that much. I mean, I
But
can't
what I'm
imagine.
saying, I'm not saying that like
There's probably
the alcohol.
thousands of
I'm not
bars and
saying the
restaurants
alcohol
in
industry
Kansas
isn't
City.
bigger. I mean, alcohol industry is a $70 billion industry, and
No, that's how much they get in tax revenue.
He's saying it's a compounding factor, right?
No, that's what they're
that-
worth. Yeah,
yeah.
that's what they're valued to be worth is 70
Yeah.
billion.
Well,
And the gambling industry is valued to be worth around like almost 50 billion, I think. So when you're looking at like a very large industry that is helping another very large industry, it's going to have an effect on that industry.
I'll go and argue like what a doobie would make. The gambling industry in the world, 8 out of the 10 biggest companies are American and are in the United States. We lead in much of that circumstances of gambling in general. Literally, as we said, Las Vegas is one of the gambling places in the entire world, and we could probably say. Literally, there's university is the best in hospitality and what they could probably find in circumstances and research and all of the other information given for how dealing with casinos, running casinos, dealing with entertainment and whatnot. I think it's something worth keeping in this case for the United States. And even if given its like difficulty to addiction and will be drastically measured through much of the problem as crime is given, I think it's kind of like one of those worth it sins like alcohol. I think it's, but if you could heavily regulate it.
So, go ahead.
Maybe you need a license to gamble.
See, like I don't. That's.
No.
I mean, you already do have to have a license. You have to be over the age of 18, like, and you have to have some sort of valid ID. So, I think, like, and this is kind of what I like touched on in my opening. Like, there are a ton of games that are largely luck based, and I think that those are not good. I think that those are very they're very large idiot taxes. They're designed and built around exploiting people's feelings of luck. Now, there are a lot of other games that are gambling against other individuals where it requires skill, it requires knowledge of the game, it requires an ability to interpret odds and statistics. I think those are very, very different. I do agree, like, that they're, like, it's the same thing with, like, online, a lot of different games, like loot boxes. They use a lot of the same strategies that were developed originally for slot machines. Those games can be exploitative, and I think that exploitation is wrong. But to say that all gambling is inherently negative or that it's going to be the same level of exploitative, I think is wrong-headed. I don't think that you actually have to lump them all together. I do believe that there are folks that can be specifically exploited and targeted. And there are situations where, like in blackjack, if you're running and counting cards, right, you can be told that you're not going to be booked anymore. You can be told that you're not going to have your bets valued and like held by the casino because they understand that you know what's going on and that you're exploiting the odds that are designed to help them win. And in those cases, it's wrong, right? But there are forms of gambling that are functionally better and more sound. And I think that if we work towards those kinds of things, sure. But like, if you're just talking about like banning gambling outright, like people kind of have that right to like do with their money as they will. Like, and it sucks, but I mean, again, the same kind of liberty with alcohol, the same kind of liberty with driving.
Why would that not apply to random lotteries and stuff? Why would that not apply to like the slot machines and stuff? Like the last argument you made, like that you have a right to. Like I completely agree with it, but I don't see why would that not apply to random-based stuff. If I have the ability to, bet my money in a skill-based game versus, randomly, well, I mean, the chances of me coming out with money are still going to be probabilistic. I don't see any inherent difference here, and I don't see how it changes the fact that it's my money and I should be allowed to do with it what I want to.
So I would argue that when you add skill to the game, you increase the odds in which a player can, like, do well, right? And whenever you're talking about these other games where it's just you versus a machine versus some like random set statistic, then you're just hoping like for like the right connections to happen and for you to like have that success. And I think that that's where it exploits people's misunderstanding not only of probability, but it removes like the autonomy of individuals to actively participate in it. That's where you get the exploitative functions of like having the lights flashing and having like the shit pop up on screen or being able to make the connections for different types like of like successes. I forget what it's called in like slot machines, but I think that that's a really big difference than when you're talking about like sitting down at a blackjack table or sitting down to play like poker against like 8 other individuals. Yeah, the house is going to take a rake, but shit, what? Like, that's kind of the name of playing the game, right?
Yeah, but so what's the difference if I don't know the rules and I don't have the skill in poker? What's the difference with me sitting down at a poker table and me sitting down at the craps table? For me,
I think the difference will be that you have the ability to learn, and then there is no ability to learn about slot machines.
Ability, but I'm not required to have that ability to play the game. I can.
Yeah, but even if you want to learn more about slot machines, you don't even have that choice. It's all about.
You can choose not to play slot machines.
Yeah,
you just choose not to play them.
Yeah, and that's the thing.
You asked what's the difference. We gave you the difference.
It's not like
what I'm saying is, as an unskilled player, I can still go sit down and play poker, which means I would either have the same odds or worse because I'm playing against skilled players. And if that's allowed, then why shouldn't I be able to go sit down at the craps table also?
Well,
unless you're going to say I have to demonstrate a certain amount of skill in order to be able to play poker. Unless you want to put that rule.
I got a good argument here.
Okay.
So if you're unskilled and you go to a blackjack table or whatever poker table and you lose, at some point in time you're gonna learn, and you're not gonna be unskilled anymore. So yeah, that's
not true.
No. It's okay. So but you at least have the. So you're saying it's impossible for you to learn when you lose?
No, I didn't say it was impossible. I'm saying
you just said it's not true.
No, you said that just by playing, you're going to get better. That's what you said.
I said you're not gonna be okay. It's likely that you will be better than what you started with, right? Compared to when you do slot machines, you're always gonna have the same chances and odds no matter what you do, no matter how much you learn about the slot machines, because it's just this. That's all you're doing.
Well, I will say there's one thing about
going to be naturally better as well than others too. like.
Well, this is like one of the things about slot machines. Like whenever you max bet, that's the only way that you should ever play a slot machine. If you're playing a slot machine, max bet, because it increases the number of chances that you're going to be successful. You still end up losing. It's still a net negative, but at least with card games, you're above like 40% on your probability to win. With a lot of games and casinos, especially the ones that are pure chance based, you're talking in the 10 to 20% chance of like being able to come out on top after a given set of playing time. Also, and that I think is like the hardest thing. Like I do believe that people should be able to do whatever they want with their money. If you want to play slot machines, sure. But I think that there should be specifically on the machine someplace or something like that says like, this is your probability. Like I think that it's really, really wrong whenever there are people that are exploited like that. I've had my godfather actually like lost his house, like that him and his wife lived in, because he gambled it. Okay. And I think that like that's his choice to do. But
so I mean, put it down. That's kind of valid for slot machines, but all the table games, the odds are right there on the table. Like it tells you exactly what your odds are.
So let's go
depending on where you go.
Let's go to Omni. You had your hand up, and then slots, yeah. I do want to jump in. I want to address some things that Problematic Pan said previously. I find them pretty problematic. But go ahead.
Who, me or
Omni? Yeah, please.
Yeah, okay. So like, I've been thinking about this during this discussion a little bit, and I think honestly, you can make a case that gambling is one thing that should be illegal. And I know that like people are gonna use like they already have like the argument that like, well, it's just gonna like go underground or whatever, and compare it to like alcohol, like it's something like inevitable. But I think it's different than alcohol though, because like alcohol is like it literally physically harms you, and also like if alcohol is unregulated, there are dangers associated with that, right? Like because then like it'll be bootlegged, and then that can like hurt people worse and like kill people because they'll make it really badly and it'll poison that already happened during Prohibition. And also like I think there are maybe certain
regulated.
Wait, what?
You were making the argument of unregulated, and then you used the example of Prohibition. Prohibition was severely regulated, and they made some really noxious shit during
Prohibition. They were it was illegal. What do you mean?
Yeah, it was extremely regulated. And your argument was if it was unregulated.
No, he's talking about an in-between state. He's talking about a legalized state, right? A legalized state that's regulated rather than a state where it's illegal and still like regulated into illegality. That's what he means. Right. He's saying alcohol should be regulated because of how dangerous it is physically.
Yes.
That's what he said.
To make it, to bootleg it, yes, it is. It can be very dangerous, yes. And also, here's like another thing. Like, I think there's certain things that the government shouldn't necessarily put a stamp of approval on. Like, I think gambling might be one of those things because, like, I don't think it's as inevitable as like drinking, honestly. And also, like, there's not the same danger of like if we made gambling illegal and that just went underground, it's probably, which it would because all that shit does. But then it's like, dude, that's not dangerous, right?
I mean, it's a lot more dangerous.
Right? It's really
dangerous. Because you're going to have card sharks and stuff. And also, if you don't pay your gambling debts, you're going to get shot by the person who runs the underground casino. Yeah. Like,
card shark.
I mean, the casinos are very regulated, right? Like, the odds, you get to know the odds, you have a right to know that the odds are, what they claim to be, and if the odds aren't what they claim to be, then you can sue them for fraud. Also, if you can't pay your casino debts, well, the casino can't just come and break your leg. So the idea that like, oh, well, it's not dangerous at all if we let it go on the streets. Well, that's just a reason. Like, I mean, first of all, it's not true. But if it were true, well, then why not? Then there would be no harm in letting it exist in public either.
That might be true, but like, I think when the government puts a stamp of approval on things, and also like when they literally like create entire fucking massive buildings in order to allow them, like I think it creates like maybe like a culture within those buildings around doing the thing, which might also foster it more. So like I don't know about that.
I hear you. Look, and I'm going to jump off your point. And Cham, I see your hand up, so I'm going to go to you next. And then Dan, okay, sure. And also DB's here, so he wants to say something. So you're going in the direction I was going to go. So I think the way we deal with alcohol is problematic, right? I wasn't trying to make a joke there, Pan. I think there is a problem with it. I think that the way we advertise alcohol, the way we push it on to people, right, as this lifestyle, right, that alcohol will solve your problems, that alcohol will get you women, right? Like, that's how we do it. Right? That's how I advertise that to men. Like, alcohol will get you women and friends. That's not what alcohol does, right? That's not anything that does. But that's what we do. Comparing that for a moment to hard drugs, right, which is another thing. Like, progressives like me are always like, let's legalize it. What I would not want in the future, what I would certainly not want, was to see advertising or anything approaching, right, like what the state is with alcohol. Alcohol, I think, is in a special category because it has been ingrained in our society, and like almost every society, and it's like it's a societal, I guess, detriment that we cannot remove, right? Like, it's just impossible. Like, it's in it. People are gonna want to drink. Is what it is, right? I don't think that this set. So that I don't think every vice is equal to other vices, right? Just because we allow one vice doesn't necessarily mean we have to allow all vices, right? Or we have to treat them all necessarily the same. So now going back to alcohol, right? Or sorry, going back to gambling, right? What with Omni said, like, we don't imagine, for instance, if we got rid of, if we legalized like cocaine, right, that we'd have glitzy buildings where people could go and partake in this, right? In which it's designed so that you specifically won't leave, right? They design it so you can't know what time it is, right? They use chips so you don't actually have real money passing through your hands. Like, up and down, like, psychology is all within that within the casino, within the experience, right? To extract money out of individuals. I think that is a different level of exploitation, right? Not that we couldn't have some forms of gambling, but to create it, to put it in such an environment, right? An environment that encourages it. And then only on the side we say, okay, well, I guess it's an addiction, so it's also a health problem, and so we'll provide some support. But all of society, everything else, right? From the apps to the casinos to the lottery, right? All of society at the same time is telling you, you got to be doing this. You got to be doing this, right? For an addict, I don't know. I actually feel bad for gambling addicts because I don't know how you escape it once you're already in that world. I don't get it, right? You have, so I'd say that the way society treats these things are different, right? Like, other vices compared to alcohol and compared to gambling. I think we should lower the acceptance of, or at least we should change the way that we treat alcohol, not saying ban it, change the way we treat alcohol, and then completely reevaluate what we do with gambling. Cham, we'll go to Cham next, and then we're going to get to everyone. So, Cham, Dan, DB, if you have something to say, D10, Promise, all right, and Rice.
Sure. Thanks for having me. Is my mic good?
Mm-hmm.
Yep. Awesome. Yeah. So I think there's a few different things people touched on. One thing I want to quickly agree with was the whole idea of it being completely random. I do think skill-based is the way to go with most gambling, solely because putting an input in without knowing what your output is, which is, I guess, the whole argument behind like what people are using for loot boxes these days, is that when you put money in, you should be getting something out that you can identify. So with skill-based, the thing that you can identify as getting something out is really I guess, a solid form of entertainment that has some form of valid input-output. So you're sitting there, you're playing a game, you could lose the game, you could win the game, but the probabilities aren't completely, like, they're not stacked with you, but they're not completely stacked against you if you know how to play the game. You can always lose, even if you're a skilled poker player, but there's still a way for you to play and to win. So I think those two things, like the whole idea of skill-based plus the entertainment value you get out of putting your money in, are two things that can be considered, because you put your money into a lot of things that don't really give you any objective take-home value out beyond entertainment, which I think is a completely valid way to use different things like drugs and gambling, for example. The one portion I think that really justifies taking gambling to a extremely regulated area is just the overall lack of financial education with most people who end up gambling. I think financial education is like one of the most foundational reasons why a lot of people lose money on things like gambling. It's not just because of not knowing how to spend their money. It's not knowing how to save their money, not understanding probabilities, not understanding investments in general. And you can treat a lot of things like gambling based on that. And so not just poker and slot machines, but also the stock market, crypto, NFTs. So there's a lot of aspects of financial education that aren't really touched, that are just pure forms of gambling. And all of it, essentially, you come out as a loser because of lack of financial education. And I think that would be an interesting point to go off of, to see, like, I'd wonder what everyone feels about how you'd feel about gambling, considering the overall health of financial education in maybe your specific area. I'm in Canada personally.
So I don't think that financial education is necessarily it. I think it's a base misunderstanding of math and statistics in general. Like I think that yes, like a solid understanding of probability and like math in general helps you be better at finance and like those types of like cost benefit analysis. But like fundamentally, financial education isn't going to make you a better gambler. Like knowing how like compounding interest works isn't going to fix my like my slot addiction. You know, like.
But I think the argument isn't that it'll make you a better gambler. I think if you have a better financial education, that you would minimize your risks of losing everything. Like the harms from gambling isn't the gambling itself. Gambling could be fun. You could even gamble without actual money, like fake money, like Monopoly money. You just gamble that way. Just make bets, right? Or based off dares, like you can gamble that way. But the gambling, when the problem comes from gambling, is like losing your livelihood, and that could be eliminated if you just understood, like, okay, I'll set out a budget for gambling, and I'll only bet what I can lose. Just like how you should invest. If you invest what only you can lose, as in like if I invest this money, I should, and I lose it, I'll be fine with it.
Famous for their self-control.
Don't you feel like this infantilizes like poor people? Like how much financial education do you need to know that if you have $100 in your bank account and you gamble that $100 in a slot machine somewhere, that you're probably going to go home broke? Like I don't think this is like, it just seems like you're speaking of poor people as if they're idiots, right? That they don't know that there's a risk that they're going to lose their money when they gamble it away, and that they have $100 in the bank account. They probably shouldn't be gambling that $100.
Well, most poor people are uneducated, at least. Maybe
hold on, but I think bringing up financial education, quote unquote, in this topic is a kind of lazy way to point the finger at the system or at capitalism or some other bullshit. The reality is these people are just at poor impulse control. They're making bad, irresponsible decisions with their finances, and that's it.
Okay, then you could just lose. It's all semantics, because you could just say, okay, it's not education, it's just habits. Sure, they have bad financial habits, and that's why. I mean, it's just semantics.
It's not. Hold on. Bad financial education versus they're irresponsible. They have poor impulse control. They do dumb shit. That's not just financial education.
The point I'm making. The point is that they should have a good education, and from that education stems good habits, right? And that habit is to set out a set amount of money that you would gamble or invest that you're okay with losing.
Yeah.
A lot of people.
So I think
it seems like these people would benefit much more from developing self-control and discipline in like impulse control, right? Much more than they would any financial education classes, whatever the fuck you're pushing.
Not classes.
No, it's not classes.
So
how do you get educated?
What I'm trying to get at.
You don't think there's any problem at all, like we mentioned before, like the big shiny buildings that are like, come here, come gamble here. You don't think there's a problem at all with that?
Do you see those buildings?
Wait,
have you seen them like driving down the road? You've seen those big shiny buildings when you go to Vegas or whatever?
No, I've never been in it, but I've seen the commercials and shit about them.
Okay, so I live in California. We have like a lot of indigenous gambling organizations, right? Like Casino Morongo, whatever the fuck, right? There's some of them around here. I hear the commercials, right? When I turn on the radio, sometimes I've seen them, I've driven by them with flashing lights. I see the fucking billboards. Hey, come here. They have a guy in a suit with thousands of dollars in his hand. And you know what? I ignore them because I know it's a stupid fucking idea, and I drive by. Right. So
that's good for you.
So wait, hold on. And I think the reason I do that isn't because I have like less than a high school education, if we're being like honest, right? I don't think I'm like especially like I'm not like a fucking unicorn or something, right? I think I have better impulse control than the kind of person that's poor and that would go into a fucking casino like that thinking they could turn $100 into $10,000. It's just impulse control. These are just stupid people making stupid decisions with their finances, and you're making excuses for them.
No, so the thing that you're missing here is essentially like, for example, it's like saying that teaching people that smoking caused cancer is not a reason why people would stop smoking. So what I'm saying is that there's a lot of people who are unaware how to spend money in general. I'm not saying specifically teach them how to not gamble, because a lot of people don't know how to spend their money in general. So it's not just how to gamble. It's like they don't know how to invest in general. And this isn't really talking about just poor people, because there are people who have money who are still poorly financially educated. People make so many arguments about, like, for example, the stock market is accessible to everyone, which is why the stock market's so great. But it's not really accessible to everyone because not a lot of people know it exists in terms of like how to access it with their own bank account and with their own wallet. There's a lot of points of financial education that do contribute to how people control and use their money. And it's the same concept as like knowing more about health will cause you to do more things that lean towards your health. It doesn't mean that you're going to go out and become like Mr. whatever it's called, Mr. Universe, but it means that you might stop doing certain things like smoking, or you might stop drinking as much. It might be a reason. I'm not saying it's going to cover the nebula of like every single person who's ever gambled. I'm saying it can educate some people in terms of like, for example, putting a budget, as an example, towards specifically for gambling, being like, if I go in, use $100, I'll leave and I won't spend anymore. I'm not saying it'll work for everyone, but it can work for some people.
Okay, so let's say they go to one of these classes, right, and they get their financial education that tells them that they should set a budget for their gambling, right? So it's $100, so they go in with $300 in the bank account, but they're only using $100 for gambling. What keeps them from using the rest of that money for gambling? It's their discipline, it's the self-control, it's the impulse control, right? So that is the issue here, right? It doesn't matter that if they're poor, it doesn't matter if they're rich. That is the issue. These are people with poor impulse control making dumb decisions, right? And I think I don't know, this just seems to so if you what you were getting at, because it sounds like to me what you were getting at was that, hey, if these people were educated better, they would know what to do with their money. And they could invest and they could put some aside and they'd have savings and all these things, and the impact of losing some money gambling wouldn't be so harsh for them, and this is something we could do to kind of lessen the damage done by this. Well, if the issue is just that people who that you guys are trying to protect people from the bad impulse control and the irresponsible attitude toward like managing their money, and that these people are like losing money that they can't afford to lose, then why not just argue for banning gambling for poor people? Because it seems like that's the issue, right? So why don't I just say, hey, poor people, you don't get to gamble because it's a stupid fucking decision, and we don't want to deal with your ass when you go bankrupt and your family's on food stamps and you're losing all your shit and you end up in jail because you're like knocking over a liquor store.
I have a better one.
You're conflating. I just want to say something really quick. You're conflating poor people as the only people who have bad financial education, which isn't true.
No, that's not what he's saying.
No, but I'm saying like my point was about financial education. It wasn't about poor people.
No, what he's saying is a poor person who loses their money, they're going to get food stamps. You're saying a rich person, they have enough money to weather and get through the situation when they lose a lot of money gambling.
They could lose it all. To be honest, there's nothing stopping a rich person from losing all their money. I know people.
It's not rich and poor. There's most people are like here. Like a lot of people who can also lose their money. So it's like it's not like literally you have $0, you have $1 billion. There's also people who have like a few $1,000s in the bank. You can lose a few $1,000s without an understanding. Some people
You
don't
lose
know how
that
to,
in
like,
one night,
their
dude.
credit
Like-
cards, for example.
So
Yeah, some people
so-
don't know how to use their credit cards. Like these are all like
let's
the binary thing doesn't really exist in this. Sorry.
let's give some other people a chance. Dan, you want to go? We got a whole issue. And you, Chris, I see you managed to get your hand up. Amazing, right? Miracles can happen. So go ahead, Dan.
Yeah, I think the chances publicly for much of these equipment and stuff is, I think, it's publicly known about the minimum requirements of the chances of you succeeding in like a slot machine, and then there's other options for specifically like blackjack and other games, and there's also another thing that people can do. It's not illegal to card count. You have to be good to not let people know that you are card counting it, and they have the right to refuse service if they know that you're too good for the system, and they'll says, oh, you can't go do blackjack at this casino. Sorry, man. Like that's how it usually kind of works in that way. And you could understand that people can be like, not generalizing it, all poor people are going to be like always going to be dumb and make decisions. I think it's just given to the situation that there's is the amount of money of them. I think generally a lot of people make dumb decisions generally, no matter what how much money you have or education you have. And the difference, much of that is the cushion that you still have to get on, or the people that you can rely on after you make those dumb decisions. We have a lot of examples of very dumb Paris Hilton figures who end up spending a giant party island that end up turning into the fire thing that end up becoming a disaster. And that for sure is a bet. Like you bet bad in it and you lost and you're rich, so you're just like, oh, just a bad bet. I understand the certain concerns to those like Prime and other leftists who have that and have to feel like they're being taken advantage of. And for sure, in certain ways, in gambling and by these establishments, they are by definition.
All right, so we got a few.
Okay, and to continue, it's not going to be as bad where you do like a National Lampoon in Vegas, where you see people doing thumbs up, or other games that have even worse chances of winning.
So let's go.
There's a lot more regulations to that.
So there's a few people who haven't had a chance to speak at all. So let's go to Rice, and then sorry, I'm blanking on you now. Promise, Omni, and you, Chris.
So I'm kind of scratching my head as to why we're speaking about this. Like everybody who gambles is like some gambling pathological, like a pathological gambler. They're addicted to it. I mean, when most studies are showing that it's really only between like 2 and 12%, with them landing somewhere around like 5 to 6% of gamblers actually being pathological gamblers. Secondly, like people continuously say that like card games are safer than like slot games, and like sure, it may seem like that, and like there's edges that you can do to like get around losing. Like you can learn how to play blackjack, or you can learn how to play poker, but like there's two things about that. Like blackjack, it's way harder than what most people actually think to sit there and count cards. Most casinos are using at minimum 3 different decks, which increases the difficulty tremendously on actually being able to count cards. That's why like when you've seen it done like extremely successfully, it's been groups of people that are doing it. There was that famous movie that was made about MIT who actually did that in real life, where a group of them, and the reason why it was MIT and the reason why the students that were chosen, because they were very gifted math students. Like it takes having a very strong knowledge of the game and being able to use numbers really well and very quickly in order to be able to do it properly. We're also talking about like educating people on how to use their money properly. If we're going to educate people, then like why are we even talking about like making it illegal in the first place? Like there's plenty of things that people do that are bad that happen just as prevalently, but we're not sitting there talking about like banning those things. Like plenty of people drink way too much products that have sugar in them. That's why America has an obesity epidemic. But we don't sit here talking about like banning sugar and stuff like that. Like sure, a lot of people have like pushed to like make it more known and everything, which I'm fine, like if you want to do that. But the numbers show that most people who are gambling are doing it at least in a somewhat responsible way, to where they're not like losing their life winnings or anything like that. You have plenty of people that they'll go to the casino with only a certain amount of money. They'll leave everything else besides their ID at home. Or they'll do like what my parents do. They write themselves a check, because casinos, what do you know, cash checks. So you can like literally only have a certain amount of money that you take with you and not be able to use any more of it. I mean, when you look at like the way that games and casinos are done, yeah, sure, slot machines earn casinos more of their money because there's a shitload of them. Most casinos are like 70% slot machines, and then you have the card games off in a certain area. But when you look at like the biggest recorded like single night or like single hour losings, they're all on card games. Especially because you have like prevalency and like growth and like no limit games. Like poker became super popular. They started showing it on TV. Everybody thought that they could play. They all go there and they're starting to lose like thousands of dollars in a single night.
Let's go to Promise, Omni, Eucharist. Dan, you got a hand up? All right.
Okay, so you stated, Prime, you stated that chips are to keep you in the game, like it's a means of like kind of controlling.
I did, and I wanted to make a correction. I mean, one, I think part of it is that yes, like when it's chips, it makes it difficult for people to like conceptualize how much money they're losing. But also, it's also a matter of safety, right? Like not having people on there. So I'll put that out there. But go ahead.
Yeah, it's for security and speed of the game more than anything else. Like, yes, it does kind of like make abstract the amount and value that you're putting in the game, but like functionally, it is a security thing. Like, you can't just like run up and grab shit off the table. Yeah. And then it also means that the dealer is actually spending more time dealing instead of like cashing people in or whatever. Mm-hmm. I think that people waste money on all this stuff. I think that Dan made a comment about the ways that people like spend money. Like movies are a very short-term experience that you can spend, an hour of your life's work doing. If you're making, $15 an hour, you can spend an hour just for a single ticket for a single movie. Luxury goods. So if you talk about buying expensive shoes, buying expensive cars, buying expensive televisions, buying expensive phones, all of those things have limited return on value and they're depreciating assets. So it's the same kind of like experiential like thing that happens. The same thing goes with like venture capital. I think that venture capital is another great example of people taking a calculated risk where they're making a bet on something and hoping that they'll get a return in the future. I think that there is a shit ton of play into like impulse control and people's ability to like functionally understand the risk that they're putting themselves into. I think that what Doobie said about the infantilization of poor people, I think the only problem that I have with that is that there are exploitative like functions around it where people are being like exploited, and there are literal businesses set up and organized around the more effective exploitation of people. It's the same thing with gambling, knowing the odds of like, or not gambling, but lottery. People know the odds of winning the lottery. They often talk about it on the news, but people still play in it. It's there are like, I think you're more apt to get attacked by a shark than you are to win the lottery in a lot of cases when you talk about these big things, but people still put a lot of money into it. Same with scratchers. It's the same kind of terrible odds where people get exploited for it and they really have no chance. And that's why I think there's skill-based games. Yes, there is like a ceiling to the skill base, and there is a floor as well, where, if you don't have a base understanding of it, you're not going to be able to count cards well. But even with a reasonable understanding of how like card counting works, you can still understand when a shoe starts running hot in blackjack. You can still understand when a percentage of outs that you have in a poker game. But when you're talking about craps, when you're talking about roulette, when you're talking about any of these other like large probability games, you're removing the opportunity for people to make an informed choice. And
why is it a problem?
What do you mean?
Why is it a problem for these things? Are removing the ability for people to make an informed choice if they're entirely driven by chance.
So the problem that I have with it is that it means that there's less of control that people have into it. And I think that when you do that, there's not just a removal of like, you're removing the opportunity for people to like make a bet fairly. You're counting on probability and hope.
Wait, but that's like the most fair thing, though, that it's entirely up to chance. How could it be any more fair than that? Like, you could have somebody who's played. I don't gamble, right? So I don't know what the fucking games are called. The one with the spinning little ball thing. Somebody's played that for 20 years, right? And they'll have just as much chance of winning as the guy who just started that day. There's nothing more fair than that. Like, what do you mean?
Okay, sure, against other players, but when you play roulette, you're not playing against other players. You're playing against the house, and that's the difference.
No, Pro, but what he's saying is, because it's strictly based on probability, when you play, no matter if you're playing now, the odds are always the same. So that's as fair as you can be, versus if I go sit down at a poker table and there's this guy who's been playing poker for 10 years and he's going to take all my money, I have less odds to win playing against him because the odds aren't set. His skill decreases my odds, versus that roulette table, the odds are always going to be the same every single time I play.
Well, he's not just. His point isn't just talking about odds, though. I believe you're also talking about education, right? Like knowledge of what you're getting into, right? Like
but I know what I'm getting into at the roulette table because the odds are always going to be the same.
No, you don't. Not everybody knows those odds
when I sit down at that poker table.
Does everybody know those odds before they sit down?
Those odds are usually printed.
Wait, hold on, but even if that were the case, like, okay, so again, maybe I don't gamble, right? So I don't know what the experience is like. But I think I can imagine standing in front of this thing with a little ball thing, right? And they tell me to pick it was like you pick a color and a number or some shit, right? And I tell them, and I look at all these colors and numbers, and I know they're going to spin it, and the ball's going to bounce all over the place. You're telling me that someone who's looking at this needs to be educated to know that ball could go any fucking where. Like, what kind of education do you need to know that that's like totally random?
Well, I think one important piece of education would be like that the house's odds are always better, and like you like that. Like if people knew that, a lot of people would probably just avoid going to casinos in the first place.
Everyone knows.
Hold on, but if you're being told to like, choose a specific spot out of like 100 spots on those things, of course the house's odds are better. Like, how would that?
I think I think there's a difference though. No, but okay, multiple things. One, okay, it's a lie that Doobie doesn't gamble. He fucks women.
Okay.
A condom. So I think he's been gambling many times.
That's not gambling. That's entirely skill based.
Okay, all right. Anyway, so
I can tell when
pop up child.
Okay, all right. Anyway,
he rolls the dice every time that he sleeps.
Two. I think. Promise. Oh my God. Two. I think Promise. I think your example about the I think they're both wrong. One, I think when you talk about luxury goods, right, getting luxury goods is not the same as gambling, right? You will get that item, right? Unless like you're like in a black market, and then maybe like who knows if it's real, if it's not, or whatever, right? But no, if you go to a store, you buy an item, you can get a high from it, you can get a shopper's high, but you will get that item. It's not the same. It's not. You can say there could be some exploitative tactics on that front as well, and I would agree that they can exist, right? But they aren't the same. And then in terms of the capital, yes, it is a risk, right? But all risks aren't the same, right? We're not trying to get rid of all risk in society. Just saying the specific form and the way it's packaged is especially corrosive and problematic. So, like the a venture capitalist, like giving money, right, to not literally just anyone, unless they want to lose their money very quickly, right? But like looking at a portfolio, right, like seeing the business plan, like investing in an individual person, right? You can do it well, you can do it badly, right? And even if you do it well, you can still lose money, but it's not the same as going to a casino, right? Like, and you already understand that. And then the last thing that was, oh yes, you guys were talking about the house always wins. So I think one thing here is that yes, people know that like the house, they hear that, but do they actually conceptualize it? Do they understand it? Like you're saying with probability and statistics, right? People don't actually understand that like so well, right? Like you might have taken a class or whatever, right, in high school, but people don't really get that. Like, for instance, okay, here's a perfect example. Within casinos, right, at those roulette machines that GB was referring to, right? I went to Vegas, and what they have next to those machines is a board, electronic board that prints out all the last winnings, right? Like the last winning number, right? Like, and there's like a list of 20 of them, right? Why do they do that? Because they know people don't understand probability. Because they know people are going to look at that, and let's say like a red 5 or whatever came up like a few times, like, oh, that number's hot. That number's hot. So I'm going to do it. Without understanding that, as I'm sure many of you do, that the next roll has nothing to do with the last roll, right? So that's a good way of moving money. They use that. So but yes, you can say. So you can. I'm almost done. So you can say that people understand that the house always wins, but do they really conceptualize that when they're in front of that table? Do they? How well do they understand? I'm done.
Yeah, but this goes back to these games that are chance based. Because the game is chance based, the person betting on that 5 because they see the 5 doesn't decrease their odds either. It's neutral. That's
true, but the problem ends up being is that, and this is, I think it's the removal of the opportunity, the removal of the individual's ability to make a choice and have influence over it, that I find like a problem with, right? Because as we're trying to like talk about ways that we rationalize these decisions and how our individual risk profiles like have an influence over our desire to participate in like these events, whether it's like, am I going to get value out of buying a new MacBook so I can become a graphic artist, or am I going to get more value out of having a nice cell phone because that higher value flagship is going to last me longer or whatever, right? Those are when you're making those choices, you have more choices in buying products. You have more of a likelihood of a positive outcome with your decision to buy a luxury product than you do with a lot of like pure chance games. And what I was trying to say in saying that is that some of those choices are wastes of money, and we can choose how we waste our money in any which way we want. And they're like the things that we individually value, whether it's going to see a movie, whether it's buying an expensive car, or investing in the stock market, like we each have that autonomy. But like I think that we, in a lot of cases, we separate the risks that we associate with making those decisions for ourselves versus gambling. You have more influence in specific games. You have more ability to influence an outcome. When you buy your brand new phone, do you buy a case? Do you buy like a protective case, or do you buy like one of those hard like?
You're conflating two things. Having more influence and having autonomy are two separate things. When you go to a casino, you have autonomy to put however much money you want on the table and to choose whatever bet you want. Just because you can't influence past that choice doesn't mean you didn't have that choice. Just like at the poker table, you can choose to fold, or you can choose to put more money on a bet, double down, call, whatever. Just because you have more choices doesn't take away your ability to choose. You still have the choice to play the game or not.
I think you're missing his point completely.
Play the game with those odds.
But you can have the
It's not just about choice. It's about knowledge of odds of different games and shit.
Okay, so wait, hold on. Go ahead.
Even if it's about choice, right? We can say that more choice is a good thing, and we should maximize choice to increase likelihood. Hold on. For example, we say that more choice during sexual intercourse is better than less choice, right? You can choose to have sex with somebody, right? But according to you, past that point of having sex with somebody, you've already made that choice to have sex, so you can't say nothing. You already made it. But even after you made that choice to have sex with somebody, you can say, hey, I don't want to have sex no more. Hey, we should try something else. Hey, let's try a different position. You could do that with poker. You could do that with blackjack. You can't do that with slot machines. You're basically getting raped out of your money.
Oh,
what?
Whoa.
But okay, hold on. That's a weird. Don't do that.
You can stand up and walk
Hold
away.
on, that exactly. Hold on. This is when you're pulling the thing like you're doing with the hand motion. You're doing that yourself. Nobody's forcing you to do that, right? So don't call it rape. That's kind of silly.
I'll do that.
I know, but like we just gotta be like.
I would
just wanna
say
be clear about
I
what
wouldn't
we're
say
talking
rape,
about
but I'd
there.
say tricked. You're getting tricked out of your money.
Tricked?
How are you?
Okay, well
Yeah,
let's
wait.
say this.
How?
Let's say this. So
We've already been over why. But...
They're not saying
If-
that your odds are higher than they actually are, so you're not getting tricked.
Well, no, but we've already been over why you can make the argument is because the house usually wins, right?
That
And they
doesn't
know
mean that
that.
you're getting tricked,
The house
though.
fucking knows that. A lot of people probably don't know that.
No,
But that doesn't- no.
I'm guarantee you, if you ask anyone who goes to casino knows the house there's a house edge. Every single person.
I wouldn't say everybody. I wouldn't say
I wouldn't say that.
Yeah.
No, I definitely would not
can't-
say that.
no.
That's such a blanket statement. So like
Yeah.
a lot of the arguments you're making are like very blanket statements about like everyone is a certain way,
Yeah,
and that's not
like,
true.
no.
People aren't all a specific way.
okay,
No,
can I just ask this
okay,
question
hold
really quick?
Okay, hold on. I do want to get some other people in. Write it down. Don't forget your question. I want to get back to it. All right. So we got two individuals who haven't been able to talk at all. I'll start with you, Chris, and we'll go to OnlyFacts.
Yeah, I just think the best thing that's been said tonight was that Doobie, and we dropped it. Doobie suggested that what we need is means-tested gambling licenses. We just ban the poors from gambling. That just sound that no,
That's
that
pretty
was
base. That's a pretty base take.
That was hilarious. Okay, so I want to go back to something that Doobie said.
Means test giving birth to children too.
So Doobie said earlier, right? We we're people with better impulse control. That's not true for all of us. I don't have good impulse control. But so great, we're better than people with gambling addictions or people who gamble impulsively, whatever. But the fact is, right? I think that some people just have poor impulse control, and maybe we can think of ways to fix that. But that poor impulse controls manifests in different ways, right? Some people drink too much, some people smoke too much, some people work too much, some people get angry too much, some people play video games too much and stay up too late and argue on political panels too much, right? So we all there's various ways that poor impulse control plays out. The question in this conversation to me seems to be, how do we handle the fact that there are lots of people in the world who have poor impulse control, and there are lots of people in the world who want to prey on that in particularly destructive ways? So the policy question that we're asking is like, what do we do with public facing attempts to take advantage of people, largely poor people with poor impulse control, in a way that ruins their lives and the people who are like dependent on them, right? So what does it matter if you know the odds of the game that you're going into, if you're being sold on kind of like a lifestyle or a hook or a marketing campaign that is designed to draw you in regardless of that, right? Yeah, so the roulette question I think is really interesting, right? I was having a conversation with somebody in the chat earlier about like, if you want to go into a casino and maximize your odds, you learn to play blackjack well, or you learn to play roulette well, basically, right? Because those are the ways you can even it out to almost 50% as best as you can. If you bet well on roulette, there's a couple ways you can get it to like 47, 48%, right? If you know how to play poker, or if you know how to play blackjack, you can already bring it up to like the 45 margin, and if you count cards, you're getting even closer to 50%, right? So yeah, you do those things. But the thing is, when you get in there, and the process of getting you in there assumes that you're the kind of person who doesn't do that, right? Most of the people who walk through the door, they want to not be the person who's doing that. And so their marketing campaigns are all designed to get people in who don't do those things that some of us are able to do. So I'm going to, lean on some anecdotes. I have a friend right now who founded a business, sold his business, retired early, and now is making a living going around the country counting cards at casinos until they kick him out. And he's just like, he's living large, dude. He's just like he's banned at I don't know how many casinos and I don't know how many states, but he's doing it, and he it works for him, right? But he has good impulse control. He can walk into a casino, he can know exactly what to do, and he can make some money, and he'll stay there as long as they'll let him, and he'll stay in that town as long as they'll let him, and then he'll just move on. He's just on this like perpetual road trip. Great. But 99.9% of casino patrons are not that person. They're not the people who know how to play roulette. They're not the people who know how to play blackjack. They're the people that the casino makes money off of. And there's lots of interesting research on like how casinos like try to keep people hooked with incentives, right? So for me, I have poor impulse control. I've made some money on online poker, I've never gambled in an actual casino. There's lots of blackjack machines around me, and I've lost so much money on these blackjack machines, right? But if I spent the amount of money on those blackjack machines at an actual casino, what would happen is I would actually be getting emails and phone calls from that casino trying to get me back in the door because I'm the customer that they want, right? I have a couple drinks, and I think that I can turn this 20 into 40, and I can turn that 40 into 80, and I can I'm the customer that those casinos want, and that's exactly what they do, right? Especially if you lost $1,000 last week, you're the person they're giving a free room to. You're the person they're giving free tickets to the Vegas game to, right? Like they're sending you shit to get you back in the door. And I think that's what we're really concerned about, right? So yeah, obviously, like we're talking about banning casinos and everybody wants to talk about prohibition. It's all this stuff. I mean, right now, the real policy question is there are some states where gambling is not legal. And if you are in one of those states and you're looking at what gambling has done to the states where it is legal or has become legal recently, are you going to advocate for legalization? Or are you going to say, no, actually, the status quo is fine. If you want to gamble cross state lines, fine, but we don't want that here. I think that's really interesting. Rice Daddy did say one thing that I thought was super interesting. Why are we speaking about this like everyone is a pathological gambler? I think that's a good point, right? Not everybody who goes in, and not even everybody who overspends at a casino is like this kind of addictive gambler that we're kind of stereotyping. But I think the problem is even non-pathological gamblers lose lots of money in harmful ways, and we see this right with like scratchers and just regular lotto stuff as we were talking about. And I just finished teaching 1984, so this is on my brain, but one of the things that comes up in 1984 is the way the lottery is used as a way of like keeping the proles in check, where it's just like a psychological thing where like they kind of know they're never going to win, but they can put a little money here and there, and the prospect of leaving the situation that they're in is just so enticing that they keep doing it over and over and over again, and the real winnings are kind of fake and all this other stuff. But it's like, yeah, so even non-pathological gamblers are using money that could probably be put to better uses in their own lives, or if we want to speak like GDP wise, better ways, and they don't, because of the ways that they get hooked in, that I think are, I think we're right to be concerned about them. So
before you do, because I don't want to make another 20 minutes before he can talk, so I want to get only facts, and then we can go back to everyone else. Only facts, please.
Okay, so I'm gonna throw in a little spice here, but just for context before I continue, I do live in Oklahoma, where there is a lot of Native American reservation land where these casinos are allowed to operate, and it's actually a sad sight because I constantly see people in tattered clothing, literally like crawling out of the woods, trying to get into the casino to whatever, maybe make some money that day. And then at the end of the day, I always see the Native American National Police. They have their own police force, like with their SUVs, like arresting a bunch of people on the way out. I don't know what's going on, but for me, it looks like there's a net negative. I don't know if it's like money laundering, but yeah, it's like the light horse police. Anyhow, having said that, a lot of times, as Eucharist was mentioning, is they prey on these people of lesser financial capabilities with things like free hotels and free food and free concerts. And they built a really nice hotel on the Arkansas River, and it looks amazing. And so you bring the people in, and then they end up wasting a lot more money than what the hotel's worth. Before I go further, I take a ban all gambling, like Taliban style, like really harsh. There should not be it allowed at all. And it's only because I look at it this way, that like everything about society is about increasing pleasure and decreasing harm overall. Personal freedoms be damned. When you look at things that result from gambling, not only are there the social ills of financial ills and alcoholism that can result, but even when push comes to shove, people start to get debts, engage in embezzlement at work. Their productivity at work goes down. So even though I'm a socialist, I will make a capitalist case in this sense. Even when it comes to applying for federal jobs and whatnot. They're always going to look into your history of do you have a gambling debt? Do you gamble, et cetera, et cetera. And if I'm not mistaken, I don't want to disparage the name of this Supreme Court justice, but if I'm not mistaken, Brett Kavanaugh was revealed to have, I think, credit card debts due to gambling, if I'm not mistaken, or was it baseball games? I don't know, but it is one of those things that reflects on character that can be brought up later on. But just to tie up my little spiel here, I always thought it was interesting that they've done like MRI scans on people who had addiction to hard drugs and gambling, and that there were parts of the brain such as the okay, it's a long name. There's one part of the ventral striatum, and how it acted the same way as a person who is addicted to hard drugs. But there was also this other feeling where you don't see in other vices, whether that vice be alcoholism or prostitution or etc. But it's that when you gamble, your brain releases dopamine, the feel-good neurotransmitter that makes you feel excited. You'd expect to only feel excited when you win, but your body produces this neurological response even when you lose. So in gambling, even when you lose, you don't know how to control yourself because that dopamine rush is still there. So I think that's the like cognitive dissonance or the curveball here, that where we can't compare to other ills, that even when it's a negative result, you keep doing it. So yeah, that's where I'm going to leave it at.
I agree with everything. Well, most of the things you said, except for the like looking at it as a character default. Like if someone had alcohol addiction, I wouldn't say that they are a person of low moral character.
I agree. I'm sorry if I intimated that.
Yeah. Okay, fair enough. All right, so
it could be a character evaluation without it being inherently like super negative, right? You could say this guy's a problem in terms of not a moral judgment, but
a health judgment. Yeah, but that not character, judgment. Right? Yeah, so not a character.
But not a character judgment without it being moral, though, can it?
I think those two things
like
are
you're a fun
the same
person.
thing.
Like I could have a character judgment of you. I could have a character judgment of you. You're a fun person to be around. That's not a moral or immoral judgment.
Yeah, maybe. Sure. I'm not going to die on that hill. So sure. All right.
I didn't mean anything negative.
Yeah. So I want to let when Doobie, you have something you desperately want to say, and then we'll go to other people. But if you're been watching this and you've been enjoying this conversation, if you're new to the channel, hit that follow button right now. Make sure notifications are on so you know I'm going live. We do this 6 nights a week. Don't want you to miss out on all the great conversations we have, and this is an opportunity for you to be a part of this because it's an open panel, right? We do that all the time. So like exclamation point open in chat if you want to be a part of this, so jump on in. And of course, support the channel, tip the channel, right? If you like this content, if you want to see more of it, tip the channel. If you're enjoying it, you can tip it by subscribing. Consider subscribing to us. It's only $5 to do so. $5, and it helps us out a ton, right? That's how I'm able to do this. Have these individuals come back night after night. So tip the channel, support us. But just $5. Subs the channel if you're not currently subbed. Thank you for 100 bits, you Chris. Gifting bits works as well. Thank you so much. Yes, thank you. You can sub to the channel. You can gift bits like you, Chris, just did, or you can gift subs. All that helps us out a ton. Please support the channel, support the community, support what we're trying to do by tipping the channel. That's the new verbiage we're using from now on. I like that a lot from another streamer. But yeah, tipping the channel is how I'm able to do this night after night after night after night after night. So if you appreciate that, appreciate these conversations. If you have a resub, if you're like ready to resub, use that resub now. That helps us out as well, right? If you've been gifted a sub by one of our kind tippers, gotta use that, then consider continuing that sub as well, continuing on the benefits. You'll get our emotes, exclamation point emotes in chat. You'll get our emotes, and you'll get our ad reviewing. You'll get that as well, and you can get sub only the sub-only parts of our Discord. So please consider tipping the channel if you're liking this conversation and all the aspects, or if you want to be part of these things in the future and want to assure that this is here, tip the channel, sub to the channel, gift bits, gift subs, use your Amazon Prime / Prime Gaming sub. That's 1 free sub per month. Use it here on this community. That's how we're able to do this. So like, it's free money, 1 free sub. Use it here. We'd really truly appreciate it. Cannot do it without your support. Yeah, tip the channel. All right, DB, go ahead.
I had an epiphany. So actually, originally I wanted to ask you guys another question, but while Only Fascism was talking, I had a full-on epiphany about something, and I just want to run you guys through it really quickly, and just let me know if you agree, okay? So imagine you're scrolling through Instagram, you see a really hot girl, right? You check out her page, scroll through dozens of pictures of her in outfits that are covered just enough to conform with her TOS, right? She got like tight-ass skirts that just barely like cover her panties or whatever, right? Maybe her panties are popping out. She looks really good. And then you see a Linktree link at the top of her page. You click on that, and oh shit, she's got an OnlyFans, right? So then you go there, you see 300 pictures, 100 videos, and all you got to do is pay like $35 a month to get access to it, right? So you do it, you go for it, and then fuck, it's 200 pictures of her in tight clothes, or bathing suits, 100 pictures of her staring at the camera or twerking fully clothed. No nips, no cooch, no dildos, no masturbation, no sex whatsoever, right? It's slightly more risque stuff than is on her Instagram. Isn't that just like hooking vulnerable people, overwhelmed by their poor impulse control, by the chemical
ban
reactions in their
OnlyFans
body?
too, yeah.
Well, hold on,
Why not?
so overwhelmed by the chemical reactions in their body and their poor impulse control, that they shell out cash to see that particular pair of tits, right? When there are billions of them on Google, right? Isn't that when you pay for that access, right? You take that step, not knowing what's behind the gray boxes or whatever, and you get shit for it. Like, isn't that like losing the bet, right? And this isn't like a skill-based thing, really. It's kind of like chins based, because who fucking knows what she's got behind there? You could do that, and some of these people, they say subscribe to people like Amaranth for a year and get just the same shit over and over of her slapping her ass and shaking her tits in like a bathing suit. But no,
get a little more graphic.
There's no payoff, right? There's never any payoff. So if the issue here is that people who are uneducated and are being like suckered into like throwing money at some shit that is not good for them, that not good for society, not good for whatever the fuck, right? And they're being pulled into this using like shady marketing practices by like having Instagram pages that basically operate as like advertising accounts. Like, why shouldn't we ban OnlyFans too? It seems to meet all the fucking criteria that you guys are setting up for gambling.
So, okay, we are definitely going to jump in on this. This is fun. But I just got to quickly say, hey, we are at level 1 hype train because of the kindness of Amanda, of me and Cuisine, and Eucharist. Thank you, Eucharist, for that kindness. We're at level 1 hype train, 53% done, 47% left. Can we get to level 2 hype train? Guys, help us out. Tip the channel if you're appreciating what we do. Invest in what we're doing, right? So that we can continue having this night after night after night. If you appreciate the fact that I am literally always here, doesn't matter if it's a holiday or not, right? And if I'm always here. If you appreciate that, I want to make sure that happens on into the future. Help out the channel, support the channel, sub to the channel. Only $5 to do so. Only $5 to support this content that you've been enjoying, right? So we have less than 2 minutes on the clock. Oh, thank you, Gringo Guapo, for being so kind for 1,000 bits. Thank you. Helps us out so much, right, Gringo Guapo? We're at 87% because of his kindness, and that's 13%. Yeah, 30% left. Can we get to a level 2 hype train? 9 seconds on the clock. 90 seconds. Can we make that happen? Thank you, Guapo, for the kind $1,000. Not $1,000. Dream and bake here.
Please, someone, please.
Dream and bake here. 1,000 bits.
Prime's more available than a lot of our friends are. Come on, let's be real. You go out, buy a drink, which some people don't want. You can just spend that money for a sub right here.
Yeah, all right. Like this, I am not a gamble. I'm literally always here. For a year and a half, we've been doing this. I've always been here. Like, I am literally the safest bet you can make, right? Like, I'll be here tomorrow, the day after that, the day after that, the day after that. So thank you, Silver Team Master, being so kind. One of our mods, gifting us up 21 subs in total, putting us at level 2 hype train. I'll get back to the content just now, but if we can make it there, so we're level 2 hype train, 3% done, 97% left. Can we get to a level 3 hype train? Help us out, tip the channel if you're appreciating this content, appreciate the consistency that I do this, right? 6 nights a week, no matter what, right? Always here, even if my computer literally explodes. Then tip the channel, invest in the community that we're trying to do. Sub, give bits, or give subs. Help us out, support what we're doing. Okay.
Wait, really quick, can I just say, so to be very clear, it is not from personal experience that I said all that. I of course would never pay to see boobs or vagina.
I mean, you were using some detail there, bro.
I'm a very
personal experience, man.
I'm a very empathetic person.
You use a lot of detail.
I have the ability to see a person,
personal feelings,
to place myself in their shoes. Prime is here, and it was very easy to walk down that path. Okay.
I'm pretty sure the OnlyFans CEO is saying that they're going to already have banned sexual explicit content.
No,
they walked it back. Yeah.
2 months ago.
They walked it back.
Yeah.
It was
The
way too
backlash
much
was insane.
Content.
It's their fucking business. No way. Oh, holy shit. 3.5 minutes left. Let's see if we can get to level 3 hype train. Please tip the channel. Help us out. Support what we're doing. All right. Chris, you had your hand up.
Yeah, I need to go, but I mean, yeah, sure, ban OnlyFans too. Relating to an earlier conversation, the overlap between alcohol and gambling, I think the overlap most strongly lies in the predatory advertising, right? And this is something that we dealt with in the U.S. with tobacco, I think, really well in a lot of ways. And we're currently trying to grapple with like new things like vaping and things like that. But like there are ways that you can sell things to people that it's not just selling people, it's preying on people. We started to draw these lines, and we've been doing it for a long time. We've had lawsuits and everything else along these lines for big tobacco and alcohol and everything else. There's a reason why alcohol advertisement has to be the way that it is currently, and probably could still be reformed in a lot of ways. So maybe the issue that we're really dealing with is the way that gambling is portrayed and sold to people, and the way that it does actively recruit and fold in people who are on the lower tier of impulse control, right? Those are the people who make the money. Yeah, obviously the people who know what they're doing. Like, it sounds like PrimeCayes sounds like he knows what he's doing in a casino, right? He's gonna walk in, he might make a little bit of money, maybe lose a little bit of money. He's not gonna lose his life savings, right? But the reason that he can make a little bit of money is because 5 other people that night lost their life savings, right? Like that's the reason the casino stays in business, right? So yeah, that bothers me. I don't know if the answer is to ban it. I don't know if the answer is to regulate advertising around it or loyalty tiers at casinos. I don't know. I'm not a policy person, but I'm broadly sympathetic with Prime's general discontent with the way that we're handling both gambling and alcohol. Yeah, so I gotta go. But
I think you're on the right track, because you know how we have bans on certain advertisements or certain even flavors of tobacco and vaping. Like in California, at least in San Francisco, they banned the advertisement of candy flavors of vapes and tobacco products.
Dude, I gotta say though, I went to Bogota, Colombia, and I was in a grocery checkout, and they had strawberry daiquiri flavored cigarettes. Dude, you better believe I bought some of those. That was too tempting. I couldn't. That sounded great. I was like, we don't have this shit in the U.S. Obama banned that. What? Come on. This is great.
Thanks, Obama.
Thanks, Obama. We have less than a minute left. Support the channel. Tip, right? Help us get to level 3 hype train. Guys, that's how I do this. I literally can't do it without your support. So tip the channel by subbing or gifting bits or gifting subs. All those things allows me to do. So if you're enjoying this content, enjoying what we do, Chris, thank you for the 100 bits. Awfully kind of you. Putting us at 5%. Thank you. Have a good night, buddy. We really enjoyed talking to you. putting at 5%, 95% left. Can we get to a level 3 hype train, right? Support the channel by subbing, gifting bits, or gifting subs. All that adds up. All that adds up and allows this channel to be sustainable, right? Cannot do it without the kindness of the individuals and the people who just appreciate, right? Like who like investing in this community. So help us out if you can, right? Or even with outside of a hype train. Support the channel by subbing or gifting bits or gifting subs. Doobie, thank you for gifting 10. Holy crap, 10 hot tier 1 gift subs to the channel. I think it's going to pretend that we did not make it. I'm not sure, but we'll see. But Doobie, thank you so kind. 286 subs in total. Thank you for the help for that level 2 complete. Does it mean we can still go on? We're level 3 hype train now because of Doobie's kindness. Thank you, Doobie. Thank you for the help. It means a lot. Allows me to do this. So we're level 3 of a level 3 hype train, 23% done. 77% left, right? I know math, fuck you. 77% left. Can we get to a level 4 hype train? Again, tip the channel by donating subs like Doobie just did. Helps out so much. Or gifting bits like you, Chris, did. Or subbing yourself. Or resubbing. If you got a resub, that also helps out the hype train, remember. Or if you've gotten a sub from our kind tippers like Doobie, then consider continuing your sub, keeping those benefits, keeping those emotes, keeping all of that, and investing into this community so that we can keep doing this, keep having this regularity that we always do. We have 3.5 minutes left on the clock. Let's see if we can get to level 4 hype train so we can keep it on. All right.
Okay. Okay. So I think a lot of agreement in this panel is that the predatory practices of casinos and gambling, people that promote gambling are the problem here, and the preying is the issue. And so all we gotta do, we can think about ideas as to remove that from happening, or at least decrease it in some forms. Just like how we banned the flavors of like candy flavors to decrease the appeal to kids smoking tobacco products, we could do that from for gambling too. So people saying, you seen these buildings, bright lights, you seen these commercials, okay, fine, let's ban casino commercials or whatever. Let's make casino buildings as gray and bland as possible. Stop these colorful lights. And so stop making it as fun for these, like a game, and just like, this is a serious life decision you're about to make. And if you want to gamble, let's gamble. So stop this. Oh, it's a game. Let's play a game. No, that's gray and bland.
Why? Like,
same reason you wanted out cigarettes and alcohol, Doobie. What you mean?
What do you mean, why?
It seems so silly. Like, okay, so you're saying that because some people can't control themselves and make bad decisions, we should restrict these companies' ability to advertise?
Yes.
Bring in new customers?
Just like we restrict their ability to advertise to kids.
Yes, we are saying that.
And
hold on. Nobody's saying that kids should be able to gamble, right?
No. I'm not saying kids to be able to gamble, but I'm saying just like it was never. Kids were never allowed to smoke tobacco products.
Exactly. Okay, really quickly. I want to point out really quickly. So you're doing the thing where you're infantilizing these people, right? They're not children, right? These are adults who have money in their pocket.
Do adults make stupid
they work
decisions,
for?
Doobie?
Of course they do. But if we're gonna start banning, if we're gonna start making it illegal for people to make stupid fucking decisions, we could go down a whole fucking line of things that we could keep people from doing, like purchasing fast food, going onto Twitter, using Reddit at any point of their life.
This is a multi-faceted situation, though. I'm only addressing one issue, and then you're saying, "Oh, what about this issue?" It's like, yeah, that's a fair issue as well. Yep. But we're attacking the preying right now. We're removing the predatory practice.
This isn't predatory. It's marketing.
No,
I guess in some way all marketing is predatory, right? So when they put out when a movie comes out and they make the poster look as cool as possible, right? It's because they're trying to draw your eye. They want you to go see the fucking movie.
Oh yeah,
you're gonna call that predatory? I mean, that's a little strange, but I mean, I guess we can use that language.
I thought you were authoritarian
before you go, Dan, yes, level 4 hype train, guys. Thank you so much. Thank you, Hell Dweller, being so kind as to gift those subs. I believe, was it 10 subs? Or maybe more of that. But thank you. Yes, 10 subs. Thank you for that kindness. We're at 13% of level 4 hype train, right? And we are making it to, we're almost there to level 5 hype. Well, not, we're so far. 13% done, though. And was it 87% left? Can we get to a level 5 hype train? Is that a possibility? Can we actually make it that far, right? Tip the channel by subbing to the channel, or gifting bits, or gifting subs if you appreciate this content, appreciate what we're doing. Thank you, Hell Dweller. I know how to say your name, but thank you for that. Sub, gift bits, or give subs. Continue your sub if you got one of those. Extend your sub too. That works too, right? Extend your sub into the future, into a few more months, right? That helps as well. But all those ways are great ways to support this community. If you're liking these conversations, help us out. We have 90 seconds left on the clock. Can we get to a level 5 hype train, right? Okay, sub, gift bits, or gift subs. Medium, small, or large donors, all of them. That all helps. So, it all adds up. Go ahead. Dan, you were trying to say something.
Cut out, bud.
I don't know where you're going at with this, Doobie. I mean, you said you're authoritarian, so I assume you prefer more the authoritarian method than being more free about this.
Okay, so you guys, you know me. I can definitely get behind the state restricting people's behavior. All right, because I think it's a foregone conclusion that most people, especially poor people, are dumb as fuck and don't know what's best for themselves, right? So, but I think that if we're going to talk about this, you need to take the next step, right? So, if this is the argument you're using for gambling, but you want to stop at gambling, I think there's an issue, right? So I'm only challenging this because I want you guys to be consistent. Right, because there are a ton of other things that we could apply exactly this criteria to that we could also argue for banning, and I want to know why you guys won't ban those things.
That's actually pretty funny that you mentioned that, Doobie, because I was going to bring this up, because I know I've heard your takes about drug legalization before, and you seem to be very, like Dan says, authoritarian against it, keep it illegal because of. So why is gambling that different from that?
But he's saying it's not different.
He wants to make sure that you are consistent on banning things that are harmful to people.
Okay, so gambling is harmful to people. So, why are you not being
trying to ban it?
Wait, hold on.
I am. I actually. Well, maybe. I was actually arguing for that for this panel. So.
Wait, hold on. Can you repeat that?
Yeah, I think there's a good case to be made.
Yeah. Oh.
I already mentioned that I think it's a necessary evil.
Wait, hold on. Can I just say something real quickly? So it's true that I used to argue for banning all drugs outright. But I think my position on that has shifted over the last 5 months or so. And I arrived at the position that all drugs should be legalized to minimize harm reduction. Or minimize harm reduction to reduce harm. Yeah, legalized. I mean, totally legal. They should be made by totally above board companies and sold in drugstores, all of them. Because I don't think that I think I've kind of accepted, right, that people are dumbasses, and it's not really useful. To go around trying to protect people from their shit behavior. I think you should let them fucking do it, and then and if they're gonna do it, you don't need to fully understanding this is a really stupid fucking decision. Then hey, you don't need to be there to give them the parachute when they fall. If they fall, fuck them. It is what it is, right? But if I think that given that these are grown ass adults, if they want to do this, fucking let them do it. That's where I'm at with the drugs.
Okay.
That's
when it comes to advertising, what I really want to say is think about honest trailers, like if on a cigarette package you'd be like, this could cause motherfucking cancer to you if you smoke this, and if you want to smoke this cigarette, go ahead and smoke it, right? That's in terms of advertising. You literally, I think you should, as a casino, say, sure, come spend your money here, but if you spend it, just know that you might as well just be giving it to your neighbor, because that's that
huge difference.
No, that's not the same It's not the same. When you go to the casino, they have posters, they have pamphlets that say
It's state mandated.
I know, but I'm talking about the commercial itself, right? The commercial is not saying, "Hey guys, come to our casino," but the chances are you're not gonna win. The commercial is like, "Hey, you're gonna have so much fun."
The cigarette commercial doesn't say, "Hey guys, smoke our cigarettes and you'll get lung cancer." I mean, this isn't the same.
And I'm saying they should. And
Are there even cigarette commercials anymore?
No, but there is advertising for cigarettes still. And all of them are like Marlboro still, when they advertise, they still use like the cool cowboy as their advertising to try to get people to smoke Marlboro cigarettes.
Do you think maybe we should ban like television ads for casinos like we
there's
did?
already plenty of like the states are already like kind of working their way into casinos, like making them put different programs out there. Like Harrah's Casino has what's called the Ambassador Program that literally they track how much money people are losing and everything. And if they see that somebody's losing X amount of money, or if like one of the dealers or floor supervisors or anything hears anything that seems like somebody might have an issue, they're actually mandated by Harrah's to bring it up, in which case an ambassador will go and talk to the person, and like they offer them multiple different things if the person actually does have a problem, like offering them to be put on a list where they don't get any sort of advertisement from the casino, offering them to be put on a list where when they come in, casinos have some of the best camera systems out of any business out there, and if you do come in, they will refuse you service if you ask to be put on this list. That goes for every Harrah's property, which Harrah's is now owned by Caesars Entertainment. So it's literally every single Caesars Entertainment property. You'll be put on this list and you won't be able to go to any of them as far as being able to like step on the gambling floor. Like these people are putting in like these measures, and the whole reason why is because at the end of the day, they're a business. They want to make money. It's like they don't want you to lose all of your money. They don't want you to have to mortgage your house again so that you can come in there. That'd be like a drug dealer knowingly putting too much fentanyl when they're cutting and killing all of the people that are buying from them. They don't want that. Sure, they might want you to get hooked because they want you to continue to come back, but at the end of the day, they want you to be able to continue to come back. That's why it doesn't matter if you lose money or if you win money, they're going to send you like free hotel rooms and stuff, because if you win money, they want to get you back in there so that you spend that money that you want. If you lose money, they're like, oh, well, we can keep getting more money out of this person. But they want you to still have the means to come in there and lose money in the first place. They don't want you to completely go broke. If everybody who gambled went broke, they wouldn't have a business anymore.
Okay, so it's as long as it's like a slow burn, like parasiting off of your finances.
That's what like every vice is. It's a slow burn.
Using like the adjacent examples, like not everyone who smokes dies of lung cancer. It's like there's a lot of examples of like people who do things who don't necessarily end up being the victims.
Yeah, but it's still extremely harmful to your health.
Sure, yeah, I agree.
Not everybody who gambles is a gambling addict or loses everything.
Yeah, but like my personal perception, I don't. First of all, just like with any business, I don't believe in self-regulation because they will always find a way to get past it. And
well, there's a state-mandated programs.
Oh, it's a state-mandated.
So yeah, it's state-mandated, but Harrah's took it beyond what the state mandated, or Caesars Entertainment, I should say.
So which portion?
Yeah, it's there's the gambling programs end up being like self-imposed because it's the idea that if an industry regulates itself in advance, they won't face stiffer state regulations being imposed upon them.
Sorry, which portion of it was state mandated?
They're still offer like all the programs that they offer as far as like not getting like these are all programs that like every single casino has. Harrah's just took it a step further in like their way of approaching people that have problems, but like the list to be put on where you don't get any advertising, the list to like no service, they still like they're mandated to have like their like posters and stuff everywhere about like gambling addiction, like having gambling problems. I believe in most states they're mandated to have like certain people on staff that are like their job is to talk to people that have a problem and like let them know like, hey, these are like this is what we're noticing, this is what your issues are. If that person decides that they want to talk to somebody about it, like these are state mandated programs. Harrah's just took it further on their way of like approaching people.
I brought that up something like that earlier. I don't think that the companies now were not that like unfaithful or at least terrible than where they were back like 20 years ago. I think they care at least enough to have the services for customers that do need it, like addiction and whatnot.
They want you to have the means so that you continue to come back and lose money. It's as simple as that.
Yeah, it's like
but that's
having a milk cow and ripping the udders off. Like, right, well, that wouldn't make any sense.
I think the highlight of that, I can't remember who said it, the slow burn, the idea of just because they want you to come back and continue doing it doesn't make it more moral, if that's what you're trying to get at. I think the idea that banning certain or regulating gambling to a degree is my point of view, where you remove all those elements that are just kind of based on Skinner box models, where you're just kind of giving people a little dose of dopamine with items that they can't really successfully participate in. So it's like when you do a slot machine, I'm not saying it's not a consensual act like Dewey was saying, like other people might be saying. I'm not saying that, but I'm saying even if it is, it's completely there's no output to your input guaranteed. But when you do something like playing poker, there is still something you can continue to input to make your output more likely. And beyond that, it's also a form of entertainment in terms of when you're playing a game. It's like playing to be part of a basketball league or something, or a rec basketball league. It's like you're paying to be part of a game that you're playing. You could call slot machines a kind of game, but in the end, the odds in slot machines and the amount of participation you actually have really changes what the game really means. So it's not really a game. It's a pure gamble, and that's where I'd separate these two. It's things like slot machines and roulette are pure gambling, but things like blackjack and poker have participation, and it makes them more of a game, where those ones are just pure 100% gamble.
I think the middle ground, Camzilla, how do you pronounce that?
Camzilla.
Okay. So I think there's a middle ground where and I remember we were talking about how if people just had better financial education and better financial habits to limit their amount of spending, then they wouldn't be ruining their lives if they spent it all right. I think there's a middle ground where you can still have these better financial habits instead of the person that's gambling having that on their own. You can mandate it via the casino and be like, hey, here's a maximum amount of money you're allowed to spend here based on your income that you make, and here, show me your pay stubs and show me your how much money in the bank you have, whatever.
So are we gonna start putting this stuff for like alcohol, drugs, cigarettes? You need to have a health report before we're gonna sell you cigarettes or we're gonna sell you alcohol, because this could possibly kill you if you have a bad liver, if you're drinking alcohol and stuff like that.
Well, I don't think that's similar, because you're talking about health and I'm talking about money, right? And I'm talking about
this is your financial health.
It's about negative vice that has a negative effect on you that's being sold to you. So if you're going to put this responsibility on the casinos to have this certain amount of protection to limit who's allowed to access this thing, then cigarettes, what's your blood pressure? Your blood pressure is over this amount. Well, then you shouldn't be smoking. So we're not going to sell you cigarettes. Or you have liver issues already. Well, we're not going to sell you alcohol. It's the same thing.
See,
we gotta just accept that niggas gonna be dumb and let it be.
So then should we do that for gambling?
You do be pills.
So, all right. I live in Texas, so I know a lot about what.
And before you say it, we're going to go right to your promise. Thank you, Doobie, and thank you, Helldweller, for gifting 5 subs previously. Thank you, Helldweller, and thank you, Doobie, for gifting 22 high tier 1 gift subs. Okay, because of that, I guess we're going to be doing.
We're going into overtime.
We're going to. We're having Amazon Lily now, right?
Yeah. That was the thing. 50 subs in a stream, and we'll be doing it. So yeah, we'll be doing that 2 weeks from now.
Look forward to that.
And more importantly than all that is, you guys can see in chat, Amanda has conceded that Rat Dog belongs to me. Okay, fuck you, Amanda. This has been mine the whole time.
Well, the amount of subs that Prime was just able to convince you to donate makes me question your ability to resist the temptation of these Instagram models and not subscribe to their OnlyFans.
Okay, no, again, that was not. That was not. Okay, okay, no. The Instagram OnlyFans thing, that was not personal experience. I explained that earlier. Okay.
No,
you just knew in painful detail.
You just dropped a lot of the money on Prime streaming. It makes me wonder if you wouldn't drop it somewhere else.
Well, I don't consider that a gamble. Okay, I know Prime's gonna stream every day. I'm gonna find some dumbasses on here to yell at. Occasionally, I'm gonna be able to get on a panel with like Counterpoints and Fnatic and hear them yell at each other and laugh my ass off the entire time. So I know this is happening. It's not a gamble.
Absolutely. Sure bet in this community. Seriously though, thank you, DB, for the kindness. It actually was quite amazing. And Hell Dweller, he kicked in a lot as well. Thank you guys. This is how I do it. This is how I'm able to come back night after night. I can't be a sure thing. There isn't people like that who are helping us out all the time. Thank you so much. Okay, so Promise, you were saying something, and then Only Facts, and then Chinchilla, you want to say something, I'm sure.
Yeah, so like I want to be forthright. I do play, like I have played a shit ton of poker. Like a lot of poker. I've played at house games, I've played at like underground games, and I've also played in casinos. I think that one of the key points that Camzilla pointed out was the amount of participation being a differentiating factor in the amount of entertainment that I could actually call it when it comes down to the ways that people gamble and the reasons that I believe that those certain types of games ought to be legal where others I find more exploitative. Like Only Facts was saying, I live in Texas, like south of the Oklahoma border, and it's my closest like way to go gamble. There is exploitation of old people on the 1st and 15th. They have buses that get sent down to our city. They open at Walmart and they sit in the parking lot, and they have a set time to leave and a set time to go, and they roll out and they're there for 24 hours straight. They have some shuttles that come back earlier, but it's really fucked. I also find it really awkward that a lot of states allow indigenous communities to operate casinos. I understand that it's part of their personal autonomy, but I also feel like in a lot of ways it acts as a motivation to demonize them in public perspective. But I think that a lot of the things like the programs, the reward programs, tracking.
I think that's incorrect because, as I said, some Las Vegas casinos have actually control over much of these casinos owned by Native Americans. So much of how they run it is by those American companies from Las Vegas.
Okay, well,
I think the point still stands still, though.
Sure that's true.
Because the face,
they still get demonized. Right?
Yeah, the face of the casinos is still going to be Native Americans. Like you said, the problem is the lack of knowledge that is actually the Vegas casinos controlling these.
I think that's fair.
Why does that matter? Like, what the fuck?
I don't understand how spending plus pick someone up is exploitative like that.
Wait, hold on. Do you think having like I don't know if Morongo is a tribe name, but like here in California we have like was it? Yeah, Casino Morongo and this motherfucking one that I can never remember. You think that having those names and the affiliation with like indigenous people is negative or somehow like drives discrimination toward them or something?
So I think that in the eyes of people that would like view gambling as a net negative would associate it directly with that brand of those individuals. Like
why?
Well, like so Morongo's not directly there, but in Oklahoma there's one of them called Choctaw, right? And that's literally like a group of Native Americans, and they branded it after themselves.
No, I was gonna actually add one thing so it could back to buttress your point is I remember when I was working at the oil pipeline factory that a lot of people had this gripe after the weekend on Mondays when they would lose a lot of money and then tell me I don't know why Native Americans always complain and they're getting their revenge on the white man. And I'm like, wait, what do you mean? and they're saying, well, they got all them casinos, and it's only them that can run it, and yeah, they're getting their revenge on us. And I'm like, wait, you're telling me they lost all this land, all the port of New Orleans, and you're telling me they're getting their revenge on the whatever pennies you threw at them? So anyways, that's to buttress your point. But
yeah, I appreciate it, and that is it. That's part of like what I'm talking about. I do believe that there is a lot of there is a big problem with predation. There is like the exploitation of individuals, like inability to make informed decisions and be like active participants in it. I agree a lot with like the whole idea that people should be able to do what they want. But I do think there are a lot of very unfair aspects of it where people get like really, really screwed. And I mean, I don't know. Like, I'm a grinder. Like, I've sat at the table for like 10, 12 hours. Like, I've done that shit. And the way that the way that I played it, it was completely different than when I played other games. Like, I won't be an active participant. Like, if you end up sitting there playing slots for more than an hour, you just kind of glaze over and you see the lights and you're just like hitting a fucking feeder bar, and it's fucking terrible, man. Like, you feel like a freaking drugged up chimp. And I've won several $100s off of like slot machines. But we talked about like, should states like legalize it? I worry about that too. And that's why I think that whenever you talk about the way that the gambling operates, I think is a big factor in it too. In Texas, we legalized lottery. Texas is a hardcore state. Like, you can't. We had blue label laws or something. I can't fucking remember what it's called, but you couldn't buy alcohol on Sundays before like 12 o'clock in the afternoon. You can't gamble. So I literally have to drive up north to Oklahoma to be able to gamble. So whenever the state legalized lottery, they made this whole big spiel about how all of the tax money from it is going to go to help public education. Well, they slowly moved that money off. And so now less than something like 2% of it actually goes to help public education. And it's just gone to fund their tax breaks for businesses and other things. So like, I do have problems with the way that the taxation from gambling works, but I think that's more of a problem with the way that like capitalism interfaces with our governance and the way that we've allowed like those kinds of excuses to kind of promulgate like really negative behaviors.
Okay. Go ahead. I want to get. Well, who's going to talk? Was that you? OnlyFacts, right? OnlyFacts, and then
yeah. Hmm? So in the same vein as PrimeCayes, I believe. One interesting thing is also Johnny Manziel, famous football player, if you guys are familiar, was a rich kid but had a gambling problem, and he exacerbated it by doing kind of the same thing where he would drive up to the border with Oklahoma and Texas and game there a lot. But that's not my point here. But I would like to hit up 2 points. And PrimeCayes mentioned something about the exploitation of old people. And I live in Tulsa, northeast Oklahoma. And in Branson, Missouri, there's a lot of those televangelists, even here in Tulsa with Oral Roberts. And in the same way, I feel like it's gambling, but gambling with faith and gambling with, healing. You have all these old people who think that if they send their money to these P.O. box churches, that they will be healed, that they will, sow whatever for the future. And basically, for me, it's a form of gambling. I'll send $1,000 and maybe God will send me $10,000 my way in some weird fashion. So I see a lot of parallels to that, and there is a lot of exploitation of old people in this sense.
That's not
but
gambling.
Lastly, say it again.
That's not gambling. They're purchasing like peace of mind when they do that shit. It's the same reason you give money to a homeless dude.
Which God are you gonna put your faith in?
Okay, fine. That's not the main point I wanted to make, but okay, we can go on the nuance of that. But
maybe it's worse than
also,
gambling, honestly. But
yeah, that's true. But lately here, so like when a state legalizes, and if they are to legalize gambling, my problem with it is lobbying governor and these dumb state senators and state legislators becomes so easy and becomes so just it almost becomes really, really corrupt. And what I mean by that is when the new governor came into power, Kevin Stitt, he actually owns a mortgage company that isn't even allowed to participate in like 8 states because of his fraudulent mortgage practices. But regardless, he tried to pull a fast one on a couple of the tribes here by saying that their treaty to have these casinos was ending with his tenure. So he was trying to bring in some investors from out of state to start, take over these casinos in contradiction or in contravention to these long-held treaties. Well, what ensued was a sort of like, I would call it like a mafia war, where these guys are lobbying the governor and then the tribes are lobbying other politicians. And at the end of the day, there's so much political capital wasted, a lot of government resources and leadership and, energy wasted when that should be done on other things, like Oklahoma having low education rates and low education funding, et cetera, et cetera. I mean, it literally got to the point where during COVID, the city of Tulsa and the tribes of Tulsa had like one set of COVID regulations, and there was another tribe on the other side of Tulsa in Broken Arrow, right outside of Tulsa, that had different regulations. And what that meant was one casino could be open and the other one could not. So the one that could not be open literally flew an airplane with like a little banner behind it with just like disparaging remarks about this tribe's casino, and they would just fly it all day over the casino telling them that they were breaking COVID rules. So my point is in a state like Oklahoma, where teachers are fleeing to Texas and other places and lots of things not going right, legalizing it and bringing it into the fold just creates more, I think, political instability, and that's not what we need. So I think my point kind of makes sense, I hope.
I mean, we keep talking about all the bad things that casinos do, but I don't think anybody's brought up like any of the like positive things that come from like gaming and stuff like that. Like people did touch on taxes earlier, but nobody like touched on exactly like what those taxes do. Nobody's also talked about like the amount of employees that these casinos have. Like here in Missouri, almost half of the employees that work at casinos are minority employees. Almost half of those are women employees. These are actually like really good paying jobs. So like if you are saying that you want to ban casinos, you have to think about like the other effects that are going to go in. Here in Missouri, a portion of like everything also goes to like multiple different things. Like the schools here get millions of dollars every single year from the tax revenue that comes from it. You also have a lot of programs, especially like veterans programs, that are funded by the taxes that come from not just casinos, but like the Missouri Gaming Commission in total. And then like a portion of all of these go to the communities that like are hosting these. And like, sure, I say like Kansas City has a lot of casinos, but most of them aren't actually like in Kansas City. They're in smaller other communities that are suburbs of Kansas City that like usually based in like my experience with them have larger minority communities, which is why like a big amount of them are, but it's going back into a large portion, or a large amount of money, not a large portion, goes back to these communities. So like if you're talking about like banning all these, like banning gaming or like banning gambling, you also have to like think about all the negative things that happen to it and what you're going to do to like fix these things as well.
So we're going to go to Chinchilla. Chinchilla's next. I do want to tackle this, right, what you're talking about. Yeah. I actually think it's part of what I wanted to talk about. So don't let me forget, I actually do want to talk about that. Chinchilla, please.
Yeah, I will address that point as the last point because I have like several points.
like a D10 addressed like one issue around this, and he said like, well, a limited amount that you can gamble. I think that's ridiculous, but honestly, like when you look at like some of the countries,
what was your issue?
within,
What did it mean?
No, he was talking about D10, not you, Dan.
Oh
no,
I thought you.
oh no, Dan, sorry, a D10. Yeah, sorry, Dan. But yeah, the financial limit, like I think that's weird. But that being said, like within Europe, we have like several countries, like basically when you are spending too much, and there is like obviously like some gamble addictions going on. People will address that within like different means. So in my country, basically, when you're not of the age of 25, your parents can report you, and they can say like, well, this person shouldn't be allowed in the casino because of the fact that he's gambling his life away. So I think that's fair, because I had a couple of friends and I basically they couldn't handle their gambling addiction. So that kind of stuff, right? So one issue that was brought up as well I was talking about the vaping, right? So I think definitely when it comes to like all these things, like the advertising is something different than doing the device itself. So you can make the advertising or you can outlaw the advertising and make things not appealing whatsoever without don't call it like unicorn, like a mango extraordinary blah blah blah, just call it mango in that case, right? So there's like a different way of like having it in the shelf and not being able to advertise, right? And I think that's fine, right? Don't make it like something like very colorful and that kind of stuff. And I think that's fucking messed up. Also, one thing, gambling and slots is still allowed on Twitch. I think that should definitely get out of Twitch. I think that's messed up because kids can watch Twitch, and I think that's really, really, really weird. We talked about the gambling definition, right? So Adobe has like a really good pull-out game, but in my opinion, that's still a risk. That's still a gamble. So what's gambling, So yeah. And then one thing that Prime was really saying, right, is like, how do you organize like casinos? Like you can have like nationalized casinos where the profits goes into like good stuff. You can all these different kinds of like organizations or organizing like casinos. Like there's so many stuff that's going on here, but yeah, that's just my point.
Yeah, I agree with a lot of what you said. Just by the way, it's Chamizilla, not Camizilla. It's a common mistake. But I agree with a lot of what you said. And one thing that I think that Doobie might agree with, according to, I don't know how serious he's being in chat, but with the whole OnlyFans thing that you were talking about, you said something that sounded like a regulation, which was you would like it if maybe they could guarantee at least one nude a month, which is essentially just a regulation. It's a form of regulations. So I don't think banning something outright is a way to solve a problem, but I think heavily regulating things in my area, we do have a province-based gambling program. So it's a lot of the money goes back into the province. And that's how we handle it. And a lot of it is we have a lot of safety nets around people gambling and making sure they have support to be able to get out of it if they're too addicted, much like what Rice was mentioning in the US. So there are programs that can help, and those are all just forms of regulation. So I am a fan of regulating certain portions, like the portions that are just pure gambling, where you're pretty much guaranteed to lose, portions where you're making casinos and gambling look more sexy, because marketing, someone said it before, is all marketing predatory? Yes, all marketing is essentially predatory. There's very few pure forms of marketing that are just like absolutely wholesome and awesome and always helping things. Most marketing is predatory. So when you try to target marketing at things like cigarettes, alcohol, and gambling, those things should be regulated. Whether they are or aren't regulated today in different areas is a different question, but they should be regulated. So that's what I'd advocate for, just heavy regulation that essentially just tries to create barriers for casinos to exploit people by making casinos seem safer and sexier than they really are.
Yeah, let me sorry,
Prime,
you didn't respond? Go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah, Prime, can I ask you a question that basically you were talking, or who was talking about that? But basically you wanted to respond to this question, right? And you wanted to talk about organizing casinos. Basically, what do you want to do with casinos then in general?
So I want to respond to Rice's points. I hear you when you're saying that a lot of that revenue is being used for purposes that I would enjoy, like funding education. Fantastic, love to see it, right? Love to see more money going to our schools. But I don't think we should be doing that. This is a regressive tax off of the poor, right? Instead, there are other places we can get this money, right? The federal government should be shelling out more, and we should be making sure that the wealthy are paying more of the bill here, right? If that's what we're going to do, right? If we're not going to do the MMT gang thing, then we should. Then the rich should be paying. This is a regressive tax. This should not be the thing that funds all of that, I would say, right? Just like how upping the cost of cigarettes, right, ends up being a regressive tax, and the poor are the ones who are just buying this all up and using that to power everything else, or with these soda taxes, all regressive taxes on the poor. So instead, let's fund it through other mechanisms. I hear you when you say that there's a lot of good jobs being made here for minorities, and that I think something that you shouldn't lose track of. I would say that we should focus on creating other industries. There's so many other industries that we could put our focus in on, right? Green energy revolution, right? There's so many places. I mean, we can list a whole number of industries that aren't exploitative, right?
But at the same time, dealers, table dealers, make between and these are the two casinos closest to me that I frequent. They make between $40,000 to $60,000 a year, and the majority are non-white. From my personal experience, and that's a lot of money that a lot of folks in other situations. It's Oklahoma, they ain't shit to do there. You can ask all the facts.
But then that's a failure of government planning. I'm sorry, that's a failure of government planning. That's a failure of us and our ability to invest. And if you're saying, yes, we have a lot of minority individuals, well, that's great. But why are we relying on this predatory industry for the ones instead? Let's encourage their employment in other non-predatory industries. Let's grow those things. We can sit here, come down a whole list of industries that could use government attention, right? That we could be focusing on and not have these knock-on side effects, right? Yes, I want to see my African American brothers and sisters, minority brothers and sisters in general, on the come up. I love to see it. Love to give them opportunities, right? But it doesn't have to be expense at their other brothers and sisters. I don't think those two things have to be related.
Yeah, I understand how many of the people that are going there and losing a lot of their money are minorities as well.
Exactly. Good point. Exactly. That's what I'm saying.
You're forgetting. I don't know.
Can I just ask why the race of any of these people matters?
I kind of agree.
With that.
Yeah, I mean, it seems like it doesn't make sense to go through this third party process to get tax funding to pay for stuff that our community needs, because you're losing out on so much value because you're only getting a small percentage of it. So if we're sitting here saying that, yeah, it's good that gambling is giving millions of dollars for our schools and stuff, where just raise the school tax, because you're getting 5% of the $10 million that people waste in gambling. You're getting $5 million of that towards your schools, when you could just raise the tax 0.1%, and get 10 million straight towards your schools, and it's not coming from people's life savings. It's not putting people in despair, and you're getting more value for what these people are putting out. Like,
I mean, sure, like that's great and all, but like, if you have something that you know works and you are getting tax money from it, like here in Missouri since 1994, they've given, what was the number that I looked up? Over $7.5 billion for educational purposes, focused on elementary, secondary, and early childhood education. Like, you have this tax money coming in. You have a private industry that's sure, if you want to go ahead and like regulate like certain portions of it, like regulate the way that advertising is done and everything. I feel like if you're going to regulate the way that that's advertised, you should regulate the way that like any like industry that focuses on a vice advertises. Like, you shouldn't allow like alcohol companies to advertise the way that they do, because they all try to make it seem as sexy and fun as possible to like go out to the bar with your friends, but nobody talks about the amount of like deaths that occur every year due to drunk drivers and stuff like that. So like, if you want to go ahead and regulate certain portions of it, fine, I can talk about that with you. But like, sitting here saying that you want to go down the road of banning an industry and taking away all that tax revenue that is going to these things, taking away all those jobs and everything, without having like come up with any alternatives for like the people that are going to be losing their jobs. Like, you have to think these are really good jobs for these like neighborhoods that are paying really well, where you don't have to have any education. Like, high school diploma is all they're asking.
I'm going to say something really inflammatory. I'm going to say something really inflammatory and really unfair to your argument, but I'm going to do it anyway. So, slavery it's good. It's a great industry that we know that works. They were getting tax. I know. I said it's going to be inflammatory.
People don't have a choice in that.
That we're getting tax. Hold on. Shut up. That we're getting tax revenue from, right, and that is supporting lots of other industries, right? Like, it, again, inflammatory, but the point is made that you, just because you have an industry that is profitable does not in itself make it. Tobacco is a great industry that we know supports jobs, right? Or supports community through revenues, right? Yeah, that we can tax. That a lot of people who have jobs, and there's like surrounding industries that benefit from it, right? But we've recognized that tobacco is harmful, and we've been undermining that business, right? We haven't banned it, but we've been undermining that business.
That's why I said, if you want to regulate like certain things, like if you want to go ahead and regulate the way that they market and stuff like that, I already said like I'm fine with doing that. But if you're gonna sit here and say that you want to ban like gambling because it's a predatory system, then I want you to like come out and start saying that you want to ban like all these other things that are
I don't have to. That's the thing. You guys keep doing this, right? I actually don't have to do that, right? I can actually look at all these things separately. I've given you reasons why I think gambling itself should be singled out, right? But and that's literally never how we've done it. Through the history of the nation, that's never how we've done it, right? If that was the case, the drugs already would be legal, right? Like once we legalize alcohol, then every single drug would have been legalized. But we haven't. We literally don't have to do this whataboutism, right? We can just say this specific industry is exploitative, right? We list our reasons, and then we get rid of that, and then we put alternatives to mitigate the issues that you talked about.
But the same reasons can be used for a lot of these other
industries.
Exactly,
and yet cocaine is still illegal.
But if these are the reasons why you want to ban, like, why aren't you coming out and saying that you want to ban the other things?
Because I don't have to.
I'm not saying that you have to, but what I'm saying is your reasons are the same for both of them. So logically speaking, if you want to ban this one because of those reasons, you would also want to ban the other one.
Rice thinks the government works on logic. That's amazing, right?
No, I'm saying that you should work on logic.
No, I actually don't. First of all, I actually did give my logic, right? If you didn't listen to that, that's your fault, not my fucking fault. I went through like 2 goddamn hours of this, right? Of explaining exactly what I think about this, right? Jumping in and making that point, right? If you didn't listen to it, that's your fault, not my fault. I don't have to repeat myself over and over again. All right, so that's already over. But then again, even if I didn't, it doesn't matter because that's not how we legislate. That's not how we've ever legislated. So it actually doesn't matter.
I'm not saying that's how we legislate.
Oh, okay,
I'm saying
then we don't
on
have
a
to do this
person by
conversation
person
anymore.
basis.
Great.
No, I'm saying on a person by person basis.
It literally doesn't matter.
If you are using these reasons
doesn't matter.
to want to ban an industry,
it doesn't matter.
And those same reasons can be held to other industries.
They're not the exact same.
Logic
because I've already done that. Right? You didn't pay attention. That's your fault. Again,
no, I did pay attention.
No, you didn't because I literally show why these things are different, right? And you haven't said anything to countermine those points, right? Go back in the VOD, watch it later, and then come back at me. Go ahead, Promise.
So, all right, I'm between the both of y'all. There are aspects of it that are predatory. There are detriments that gambling can have. One of the reasons why I am for having I've gone to seedy ass houses and played like underground games in like warehouses and shit like that with like 4 or 5 tables where they literally have dudes with guns at the door. They have a locked metal room that you have to go through for like cash because gambling's illegal in Texas. I would rather pay for a government organized hall that I can go into and play safely and securely, knowing that I'm not going to be potentially like held up. Some of these poker houses, some of these poker rooms have been raided by people that are trying to like go in there and steal from folks. That shit's fucking dangerous. I would rather have there be.
Yep.
What's up?
Why the fuck would you go? Well, okay, I'm I'm trying to understand what led you to this situation. Right? So you said you went to some shady underground gambling thing where there are guys with guns at the door. You know these people that people raid these things sometimes and rob everybody. That it's illegal in your state. Why would you do that? Why would you go there?
Because it's closer than the 1.5 to 2 hour drive that I have to make to go
Why
play.
not just not gamble?
That's because I enjoy doing it.
You're gonna risk being like held up in some fucking shady
I prefer not to.
By, like,
that's why now like I prefer to go to like another state and like pay my tithe there instead of like going to some other random like casino room.
So did you feel like you were being exploited by these people when you made the decision to go to this really shady place and with these guys with guns at the door where you know that the people raid and rob everybody now and then? Like did you feel like you were being exploited, or the marketing is what pushed you to do that? Like how is that not your responsibility, your decision?
There are two different ways that a lot of the poker rooms work. Some take a rake off of every hand. Some require a flat fee. I prefer the ones with flat fees. So you go in, you have a minimum amount that you bring in, and then like you pay like $25-$100, and then you get to play all night for as long as you basically can stay there. A lot of these places, they open on like a Thursday morning and then go till Monday. I chose to avoid the ones. I paid the flat fee. I didn't pay the per hand rake because I preferred paying the other. I felt like the per hand rake.
You didn't hear me. So I was asked the question again. So
no, I heard you. You were asking which one was. Why didn't I go to the ones? Do I feel like I was being exploited?
No.
I actively chose.
Yeah, so
I actively chose to not go to the ones where I felt like I was being exploited on the per hand rake because of my style of playing. I play for a long time, and I use like pot averaging.
You're dancing around his question.
No,
you're aware of the risk. Then these are like even like greater risks than usual, right? Because there's a risk that you're gonna be like raided or something, or the police are going to show up and arrest you. So you're aware of these risks. You're aware that gambling in general, there's a very low chance you're going to walk away having made any money, right? But you made the decision to go to this shady place and do this anyway. So I'm trying to understand, because this entire conversation, you and others have been making the argument, I think, that this is the responsibility of the casinos, of politicians, of racism, whatever the fuck, right? That this is someone else's responsibility that has led to these people being exploited and led to believe that that they have a chance of winning money when they go into these casinos. You're not one of these people, right? You're aware of all these things, but you did it anyway. Right, so why are you different than all those other people that you're saying don't have that responsibility where it's someone else's fault?
I was literally giving you the reason why I chose the poker rooms that I chose. So
he chose the one that had the flat fee versus the percentage for every hand. You still chose to go to an illegal poker room in a warehouse with people who had guns. So why did you decide to take that risk?
Yeah, because to be clear, the reason I'm asking is because I think a lot of the language you guys are using is really like infantilizing toward these people, right? You're speaking as if they have no as if they're like drones that see like pretty colors and they just wander in and throw their money at things. I don't think people are like that. So I'm just wondering why you, as someone who's aware of the risks, you seem like an intelligent person. How are you not the same as all those people that you're saying have no responsibility, and you're attempting to throw that blame at the marketers or the casinos or whoever else?
Okay, because so just like this is where I get into my differentiation. This is why I'm between where Prime is and where you are, right? There is choice. I have the ability to choose to go to different poker rooms or go to a state regulated one that has a lot more security, right? And this is it's my ability to make that choice and to have an active participation within how that choice gets made. Now, if I were to go into a place and they all of a sudden they changed it, I would walk out, right? I would get my money and I'd just be like, yo, I'm leaving, right? But in this case, I understand that there's a flat fee for me to go in and sit down at the tables. I understand where I am in terms of my money, how I'm going to be playing my game, and then I'm going to play for a certain duration, knowing as long as my resources
okay,
allow.
and you feel like you weren't being exploited, correct?
Yes.
Okay, so if you feel like you were not being exploited in that situation, why do you think that these other people, right, who you're saying I think need to be handheld, is what you're describing?
Sure.
Why do you think they are being exploited in very similar situations where they're making very similar choices to the one that you just described?
Because I don't believe that they have the same active participation within the decision-making process.
They see pretty colors. They walk into the building and they throw the money at the stupid machines. You just think you're smarter than these people, and that they're like infants. They have like child brains, right? They don't know how to fucking.
No, it's not that they're fucking infants, Doobie. It's that I've already pointed this out. Adults can be dumb too, right? In fact, a lot are. All right.
Why?
They
Why
don't have to be children to be dumb, dude?
No. But this is ridiculous. He's making this all about poker. It's not about poker. It's about the risk you're taking. And if you're saying that people shouldn't be able to go to a slot machine because they don't have enough control over it, but yet you're willing to go to some shady, illegal warehouse to gamble, but the fact that you would make that decision, but you're the same person saying that people shouldn't be able to choose to sit down at a slot machine is pretty hypocritical.
So I think, again, there's a level of decision making that's available in certain games versus other games, and I think that's where.
I'm talking about the game of poker. I'm talking about the risk of going to a warehouse, a shady warehouse where people have guns that could be raided, where you could be arrested. All of those things you knew were possible, but you still took that risk. But a person who knows the odds to a slot machine, they're somehow less cognitive aware than you are. That's what doesn't make sense. You keep making this is poker.
So okay, but yeah, all right, I understand where you're coming from. So the decision for me to take that risk with all of those unknown variables is still in my mind significantly different enough that it merits the opportunity for me to make that choice, right?
But okay, but one of the unknown risks is you don't know how oh God, where's that word? It's totally flew out of my brain. how likely it is that the police were waiting around the corner for you to walk in, and they're going to show up and arrest everybody in there, and you're going to lose whatever money you have, and they're going to put you in jail for the night. You don't know how likely that is, right? You don't know how likely it is that somebody's been plotting to run in and shoot everybody up and steal your money, right? But so you don't have all the variables, right? They're not written down on a chalkboard somewhere for you. So how's that any different, right? And these are much greater risks, by the way, than someone sitting at a slot machine and gambling away their money $10 at a time or whatever the fuck it is. So why would you take away their ability to do that when you're willing to make this much fucking greater risk decision?
So this is one of the only few reasons that I participated in it is because I actually looked up the laws around it. They wouldn't actually be able to arrest me. All they would do is basically send me home. Like the people that are running the house would be the ones that are the people that are running the room are the ones that end up getting in trouble. Because they're the ones making the profit off of the illegal act. And that's where the issue comes.
I think ProMess, you definitely messed up there. But that being said, I think that nowadays you can just go online and you can have all these crypto sites, and they have offshore stuff and that kind of shit, and it's pretty much the same. And 10,000 of people do that as well, and it's not regulated whatsoever. You don't know the algorithms behind it, and they fucking scam you.
Those are actually
big time. So, mine, if you're talking about my country, the Netherlands, one of my it's the Kingdom of the Netherlands, and one of the countries within the kingdom of one of the counties of the Kingdom of the Netherlands is Curacao. Curacao has a lot of offshore casinos in there, and those aren't banned. And that's how they find a loophole. So those aren't banned. So for the record, those aren't regulated, and those are fucking shitty.
No, here in the US,
in Texas, you're not allowed to use online. You're not allowed. You're technically not allowed to gamble online.
Here in the US, those websites they go off your IP address based on where your IP address is. If your state has made it illegal to do that, then you can't do it. It is a regulated industry still.
And then the influence comes in, influence comes in, and they say, "Use VPN, guys. Use a VPN."
No, VPNs don't actually always work with these. It's like here in Missouri, even if you VPN to a different place, sports betting is illegal in Missouri. Even if you try to use a VPN to online sports bet, the website a lot of the time will come back and say,
slots.
It looks like you're using a VPN. I'm saying it's the same type of thing.
I'm not gonna
betting with cash. It is regulated. You can't just say it's not regulated because it's
Listen
not regulated there.
I'm not gonna throw any shade to any streamer, but I know for a fact that one of the biggest, if not the biggest streamer that does gambling streams on this fucking platform, basically links to a company that's based in Curacao.
So it's not illegal in his state then?
Yeah, that's the thing.
It's state by state. I just said it is regulated, but it's
Canada
state by state. There you go. You could also move out of country, but online gambling with real money is something that is regulated in the United States. It's going to differ state by state, just like a lot of other regulations do, but it is something that is regulated. You can't just say that it's not regulated, because it is.
Oh, no.
And a lot of them, you can't get. A lot of them you can't get payout either. If they can't send the money to your house, they can't wire the money to your bank account because you're in a state that has that regulation, because then the bank would be in violation of money laundering, right?
But I'm not saying that it's not regulated. It's the practice is generally through cryptos and that kind of shit, right?
Yeah,
so that's the loop around. That's still a loophole, right?
That's the same thing with the poker rooms, right? I accepted the risk of going to a poker room where I knew that, if the room was raided, I could lose the entire amount of money that I put in, right? The amount that I was staked for in the game that night. And that's the thing. It's like I don't, and this is why again I think that there's a difference. Like whenever we remove the opportunity for people to like do things in a regulated fashion, we put people at additional risk.
So I want to hear from Claris.
For me?
Yeah, you said you had your hand up, right?
Yeah, I did. Thank you. Yeah, so I think the main thing here is people. I don't think necessarily actually care so much about whether or not gambling is illegal. I think this is more about the brain rot, degenerative, kind of addictive, predatory side of gambling that can kind of come along with it. So hijacking of um, reward systems and encouraging people to dump tons and tons of money over and over again over long periods of time into the same system that doesn't properly reward them back, I think is the main problem that people see with gambling. I mean, if you ever look at Wall Street bets, I mean, investing in the stock market can effectively be gambling. But there's very different types of rewards systems and feedbacks for that type of thing. For the most part, you know, if you lose a ton of money, you know, on Wall Street bets, you can post the you know, the subreddit or whatever and talk about how stupid you are, you know, make a big meme out of it. But that's really basically it. But when you talk about things like you know, flashing lights, whatever, you know, the sounds, everything that goes along with the kind of degenerative gambling that people do, I think that is kind of the part that sickens them a little bit, and it sickens me too. I don't, you know, I've been to casinos a few times, and just walking through the floor, you know, you see people sitting at these slot machines for hours on end, just kind of tossing, you know, their money away over and over again, and you know, they get basically nothing back. So, and I have people in my family that gamble regularly. You know, I don't hear that much in terms of like, you know, them losing tens of thousands of dollars. It's pretty much always, you know, how they talk about, you know, they win some amount of money back after they've lost some amount. So it always comes out kind of as a wash. But they're also not going to the casino every day like I know some people do. So that I think is the part that scares people a lot is, you know, somebody being hooked in and basically going to the casino like every weekend or every Friday night or something like that, as a way to just kind of like to disengage and to kind of turn off. That's kind of their release, is that just dump a bunch of money into a slot machine. So I think that is ultimately the part that we feel uncomfortable with, and I don't really know necessarily how to remediate that. I think you could probably have additional regulations around the gamification of you know, slots and things like that online. I think that would probably be appropriate. You could probably increase the kind of the verification of you know, somebody's identity when they're actually looking to gamble online. You could do things like that. You could also put in place legislative limits in terms of like how often somebody can gamble, or you know, how much money they can actually put into the system. All those things you could theoretically do. It's just a matter of whether or not the public has an appetite to do it. So that's
Yeah,
it.
but you're playing a game. Like you keep
Right.
saying all these things that should be done to make the game less fun and the game more appealing, but these people are playing a game. It's supposed to
Yeah.
be fun. It's supposed to be appealing.
Yeah, I understand that. But as far as gamification of gambling, if you're playing a game, like say for example, if I go into, you know, Warzone or something like that, I go play Call of Duty, I'm not putting money at risk in order to potentially win the game, right? Like I've already paid to play the game. I could pay for like a battle pass or some kind of enhancement of the game, but it's not something where I'm putting an additional amount of money at risk. It's a different kind of scenario. It's a different genre, I guess, of game. So I think there's obviously less at risk than if I were to just constantly try and you know, win money via slots or something.
Yeah. For online gaming or online gambling. Sorry. Basically, wouldn't it be like a good that you basically have like that there's like a regulation where they say like, well, you have to. This is the win rate on this specific thing. Like, wouldn't that be like one step in a good direction? Because you have so many online gambling sites, and definitely with slots, you don't necessarily know what you're getting into. So wouldn't that be like one right step in the direction.
I'm not sure about the slots, but again, like all the table games, they have the win rates and the odds there. I'm not sure about slots though.
Yeah,
I don't know. I feel like it's just, if some old lady wants to show up every weekend at a casino and sit there for hours gambling away $10 at a time on some slot machine, like, why? Who gives a fuck? Yeah, she's probably losing lots of money. I'm sure she knows she's losing lots of money. But if this is what she wants to do with her time, like, why is it your business?
Because I think the problem becomes is that a lot of people end up getting like a poor perception of the odds. They think that there's going to be the opportunity. I think the same thing can be said with like bingo halls and stuff like that. Form of like entertainment, you can participate marginally.
Okay, but why? So if they just put the odds like on the machine on the side, right? Like, would that be enough for you?
No.
Okay, so then what do you want them to like take like a statistics class or something? Like, what do you want?
No, I don't. I believe that there are specific types of gaming that is incredibly like predatory. It is designed to give people a tiny chance at winning, and then taking much more than they actually.
That's why it's called gambling. Like, yeah.
Yeah, but I mean, like, it's just
designed
bad.
not to give out a payout until they have a certain amount. Yeah, that's different than if you're playing poker and you lose because you had a bad hand or because you didn't lose a fold.
That's actually not how slot machines are designed.
How about we make the odds completely equal? There's the no more house wins.
I mean, if you want to take away the RTP on slot machines, it's fine. But like,
oh my god,
you have people that would be
one
losing
that I'll take away the incentive for casinos to do it. I mean,
yeah,
like,
I know that fairness triggers you, do.
No, it's not even fairness. It seems like you guys are advocating for removing people's choice, right? Removing their ability to make this decision for themselves, even if it's a bad decision. And
dude, if this person wants to jump off
and
a
I don't.
turn
One
themselves
second.
into a human splat, then they should be.
Wait,
able
hold
to
on.
do it, right?
Well, I think that'd be fine. I prefer they don't do it in a place where people would have to climb bad for them, but like whatever. But it seems like you guys are advocating for removing someone's ability to make this decision, but you're not giving any good reasons that can't be applied to 1,000 other things that you guys, I know you'd be against. So like, why this thing in particular? Why is it so egregious that a grandma might want to sit there and yeah, it's a topic, right? But this is like a broader thing, right? And when we're talking about removing people's like autonomy, so why is this?
Because it's exploitation. It's exploitative at base. Like,
you're not giving a reason. Because what like when you go to buy a car, like they've passed all this type of legislation where they have to print the interest rate in big letters. They have to show you the APR and all the stuff. They have to.
They also have lemon laws, right?
Have to put those numbers there because you have to be able to see it. So Doobie just gave you the example. What if they put the odds right on the slot machine so people can see exactly what their odds are for winning? And you said no, that's still not enough.
They still have lemon laws.
Problem is that your perception of value is very different. It's the perception of like you can't keep comparing.
It's not perception.
No, it is perception because assets matter. So like if you purchase a car, you can resell a car. Like it's an asset you own. It's a physical item that you own and you could resell. It's not just you putting in money, hoping and wishing for money to come out.
No, that's completely not addressing my point. If they put on the side of the slot machine, your odds of winning are 4%. How is that deceptive?
Your point. I am addressing your point. What I'm saying is that argument doesn't even matter for like the core of why games like slot machines are what's it called?
That's completely the core because you're saying the slot machine is deceptive because people don't have the understanding or the perception of what their actual risks are, so they're throwing away their money. So we said, let's put the actual risk on the machine, and now you're saying that still isn't enough. It seems like the failure isn't of the game or the casino, it's of the people. If you can't comprehend what 4% means, what you have a 4% chance of winning, that's you. That's not a failure of the game or the casino.
But you're talking about one method of kind of trying to mitigate the types of losses that people will take. So you're talking about one potential regulatory step. So you're basically saying, oh well, the odds are on the side of the game. Well, why do you think they're on the side of the game? Most likely because there's a regulation that's in place that says there needs to be odds on the side of the game.
No,
You could, well, I don't know that's necessarily how it's always been. I don't think you necessarily would always have to have those odds on the side of the game.
No, I'm just saying that's how the games are currently designed. I mean,
okay.
if you wanted to get rid of the return to player, which is like the way that games are designed or slot machines are designed, is there's an RTP percentage, it's a return to player percentage. Normally, this is going to be anywhere between 0% and 95%. Where basically, like, if a player spends like $1 million, they should be getting 95% or whatever the machine is programmed. If like that's the way that they're designed. If you want to like take out that design in there to where it's like just strictly on the probability, and then you want to go ahead and like put out the probability and accounting report, which is like the probabilities for you to hit each one of these different things, like put that on there and make that known. That way it's like literally 100% a game of chance. It's not on the casino side, it's not on your side, it's literally just you have this ratio, like this percent chance to hit any one of these winnings.
Okay, I understand what you're saying. So we don't have to go down that rabbit hole. So let's talk about something else instead.